Hey there, welcome to Broaderos. Tonight, we've got hours of chilling horror stories combined with soothing rain sounds to help you relax and sleep. Before you drift off, leave a comment below and let us know where you're listening from and what time it is. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe right away. If you end up not enjoying it, you can always take it back later. Get cozy and let the fear take over. The House of Memories. Have you ever walked into a place and felt an unsettling chill creep up your spine? I have, and it all began the moment I stepped into that old, withered house at the end of the lane. It was supposed to be a simple getaway, a chance to escape the monotony of my life for just a few days. Little did I know, this house held memories that would intertwine with my own and slowly unravel the fabric of my reality. The sun hung low in the sky as I parked my car outside, casting long shadows that danced across the overgrown lawn. Weeds had claimed victory over the once pristine garden, and the paint on the shutters was peeling, revealing layers of neglect. But it was the kind of place that stirred a sense of nostalgia in me, echoing fragments of a childhood I could barely remember. As I approached the front door, a gust of wind howled through the trees, carrying with it a whisper that felt all too familiar. I pushed the door open, and it creaked loudly, as if protesting my intrusion. The air inside was thick with dust and the scent of aged wood. Each step I took stirred up clouds of memories, and I could almost hear the laughter of children echoing through the halls. A shiver ran down my spine, but I dismissed it as just the remnants of my imagination. As I explored the dimly lit rooms, I came across an old mirror that hung crookedly on the wall. Its surface was clouded, reflecting a distorted image of the room around me. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the glass, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a figure behind me, something flickering at the edge of my vision. I spun around, heart racing, but there was nothing there, just the quiet stillness of the house. I shook off the feeling, attributing it to the fatigue from my journey. I was alone, after all. There was no one to disturb me in this place of solitude. I decided to settle in and unpack my things, hoping to shake off the nagging feeling that clung to me like a shadow. As I moved through the rooms, I felt a growing sense of unease, as if the house itself were watching me. That night, I lay in bed, the old springs creaking beneath me, and tried to silence my racing thoughts. I was exhausted, yet sleep eluded me. The darkness wrapped around me like a heavy blanket, thickening with every passing minute. I could hear the distant sound of wind rustling through the trees, but it began to morph into something else, a low, rhythmic tapping that echoed through the halls. I told myself it was just the house settling, but deep down, I knew it was something more. In that dim light, I could see the outlines of the furniture, the shapes blurring into one another as my mind wandered. Just as I began to drift into a restless slumber, I was jolted awake by the sound of a child's laughter, soft, yet haunting. It seemed to emanate from somewhere deep within the house, and I could feel my heart pound in my chest. Was I losing my mind? With shaky breaths, I forced myself to sit up and listen. The laughter faded, replaced by a soft humming that seemed to wrap around me like a fragile thread, beckoning me to follow. Against my better judgment, I slipped out of bed, the floorboards creaking underfoot as I ventured into the hallway. The air was cold, and the shadows seemed to dance along the walls, morphing into shapes that played tricks on my mind. I followed the sound, drawn deeper into the house, each step heavy with a mix of dread and curiosity. The humming grew louder, more insistent, and I felt an inexplicable pull toward it, as if it were calling me home. As I reached the living room, I saw the mirror again, its surface shimmering in the dim light. My heart raced as I approached it, captivated by the strange allure it held. I looked into the glass, and for a fleeting moment, I saw flashes of images, faces, places, moments that felt achingly familiar yet entirely foreign. They flickered like a dying light, fading in and out of focus, pulling me into their depths. And then, as quickly as it had started, the vision vanished, leaving me staring at my own bewildered reflection. I shook my head, trying to clear the haze that enveloped my thoughts. The house was playing tricks on me, I told myself. But deep down, I felt a dark undercurrent, an unsettling truth lurking just beyond the edges of my consciousness. The first night in the house ended with more questions than answers. I returned to bed, but sleep eluded me once again as the laughter and humming danced in my mind like a haunting melody. The unsettling feeling deepened, and I realized this house, with all its memories, was not just a refuge, it was a gateway to something much darker. Morning light streamed through the cracked window panes, filtering into the room and casting a warm glow over the dust motes suspended in the air. I blinked against the brightness, the remnants of the night's eerie experiences clinging to my mind like cobwebs. I sat up slowly, the heaviness of sleep still draped over me, and took a deep breath, determined to shake off the lingering unease. I pushed myself out of bed, my feet meeting the cool wooden floor. The house was still, save for the occasional creak and groan that seemed to resonate from its very bones. I made my way to the kitchen, hoping a strong cup of coffee would help ground me in reality. The quaint, rustic charm of the space offered a comforting reprieve, with its faded tiles and weathered cabinets that spoke of better days. As I brewed the coffee, I couldn't help but glance out the window at the overgrown yard. It was a wild tangle of weeds and wildflowers, a landscape untouched by time. I noticed something peculiar, a small figure darting among the tall grass. I squinted, trying to get a better look, but it vanished before I could discern its shape. A chill prickled at the back of my neck. I dismissed it as a trick of the light or perhaps a passing animal, but my heart remained uneasy. With a steaming mug in hand, I returned to the living room, intending to collect my thoughts. As I settled into the old armchair, I glanced back at the mirror, its surface still clouded yet strangely inviting. I felt a pull toward it, an inexplicable urge to delve deeper into whatever secrets it held. I approached cautiously, half expecting the strange visions to return. Instead, I was greeted by my own reflection staring back at me. Yet, as I examined my features, I noticed something off, a flicker of movement in the glass. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the surface. For a moment, I thought I saw the outline of a child behind me, standing just out of view. I whipped around, heart pounding, but once again, the room was empty. Just shadows and the quiet hum of the house. I shook my head, forcing myself to focus. Perhaps I had simply been too isolated for too long, my mind conjuring phantoms to fill the void. After a few more sips of coffee, I decided I needed to explore the town to regain some semblance of normalcy and shake off the lingering eeriness of the house. As I drove down the winding road, the trees arched overhead, forming a green canopy that swallowed the sunlight. The quaint town of Elderswood was a short distance away, its charm encapsulated by cobblestone streets and vintage storefronts. I parked my car and wandered through the town square, absorbing the warmth of the sun and the distant laughter of families enjoying their day. But even amidst the bustle, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The townspeople greeted me with friendly smiles, yet their eyes held a glimmer of something else, recognition? Curiosity? I couldn't tell, but it sent a wave of unease washing over me. As I entered a small cafe, the smell of fresh pastries and brewing coffee enveloped me, momentarily soothing my frayed nerves. I ordered a pastry and sat by the window, watching the world go by. Yet, As I bit into my food, a sense of foreboding settled in my stomach. My mind drifted back to the house, to the mirror and the child I thought I had seen. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes, approached my table. "First time in Elderswood?" she asked, her voice warm yet probing. I nodded, trying to appear nonchalant. "Just taking a break from the city." Her gaze softened. "Well, this town has its share of secrets. Some folks say the old house at the end of the lane is haunted." I felt a chill run through me. "Haunted?" She nodded, glancing over her shoulder as if ensuring no one was eavesdropping. "It used to belong to the Marlowe family. Rumor has it, the children who lived there disappeared one summer. Some say their spirits still linger." A knot formed in my stomach, and I forced a smile, trying to mask my discomfort. "Just an old story, right?" She shrugged, but the look in her eyes spoke volumes. "Stories have a way of becoming real around here. Just be careful, dear. Not everything that's lost wants to be found." Her words hung in the air, heavy with an ominous weight. I thanked her and finished my pastry in silence, my mind racing. The history of the house began to merge with my own experiences, weaving a tapestry of dread that I couldn't escape. As I returned to the house later that afternoon, I felt a growing sense of trepidation. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting elongated shadows that danced across the lawn. I parked and stepped out, my heart racing as I approached the front door. The whispers of the past echoed in my mind, growing louder with each step. I paused at the threshold, the door creaking open as if welcoming me back. But as I stepped inside, the air felt thicker, heavy with an unshakable tension. I glanced toward the mirror once more, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a small hand pressed against the glass, desperately trying to escape. Heart pounding, I turned away, shaking off the sensation. I was being foolish, just a figment of my imagination fueled by the town's stories. Yet, the whispers grew more insistent, as if urging me to uncover the truth hidden within the walls of this old house. As night fell, I resolved to confront whatever darkness lay within. I needed to understand the house, its memories, and the shadows that lurked in its corners. But deep down, a part of me feared what I might uncover. The shadows deepened as night enveloped the house, wrapping it in a shroud of darkness that felt almost alive. I lit a few candles, their flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. The house seemed to breathe around me, each creak and sigh echoing like whispers from its past. With a mixture of trepidation and determination, I knew I had to explore further, to confront the memories that lingered here. I made my way back to the living room, drawn once more to the mirror. I stood before it, its surface reflecting the dim light of the candles. I touched the glass lightly, feeling a chill radiate from it, and whispered, "What do you want from me?" The question hung in the air, heavy with expectation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the mirror began to ripple, the surface distorting as if it were a pool of water disturbed by an unseen force. My breath hitched, and I leaned closer, entranced. Suddenly, images surged forth, snippets of laughter, fleeting glimpses of a garden bursting with color, children playing hide and seek, their joyful voices echoing in the air. But as quickly as they appeared, the images twisted, darkening into shadows of fear. I saw the same children, their faces pale and ghostly, their laughter now an echo of despair. A chilling realization gripped me. The memories in this house weren't just echoes of joy, they were tainted with sorrow. I stumbled back, heart racing, and felt the urge to escape, but something anchored me in place. It was as if the house itself held me captive, forcing me to confront the darkness woven into its history. I needed answers, and perhaps the old town held the key. Determined, I grabbed my coat and headed out into the night, the cool air sending a shiver through my bones. The town was quieter now, the streets illuminated by the soft glow of street lamps. I made my way back to the cafe, hoping to find the waitress or anyone who could shed light on the Marlowe family and their tragic story. As I entered, the warmth of the cafe enveloped me, a stark contrast to the cold chill that clung to my skin. The familiar smell of coffee and pastries filled the air, but the cafe was mostly empty, save for a few patrons scattered in corners. I approached the counter, where the waitress was tidying up. "Back again?" she asked with a smile, though her eyes hinted at something more. "Yes," I replied, my voice slightly shaky. "I was wondering if you could tell me more about the Marlowe family?" Her expression shifted, a flicker of concern passing over her face. "That's not a story for the faint-hearted," she warned, her voice low. "I think I can handle it," I insisted, desperation lacing my tone. "I need to know." She hesitated, glancing around as if ensuring no one else was listening. "All right. But don't say I didn't warn you." The Marlowe family had 3 children, Clara, Ethan, and little Lily. They were the light of that house, or so the town believed. But one summer, they vanished without a trace. Just gone. My heart pounded in my chest, the weight of her words settling heavily upon me. What happened to them? They say their laughter still echoes through the halls. Some believe they were taken by something sinister, a darkness that had long been trapped within those walls. Others think they wandered into the woods and were lost forever. The parents searched for weeks, but no one ever found a trace of them. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. After their disappearance, strange things began happening in that house. People reported seeing shadows in the windows, hearing cries in the night. It was as if the children were still there, trapped between worlds. Trapped? I echoed, chills running down my spine. Some say the mirror holds the key, she continued, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and sadness. That it can show the truth of what happened, but it also reveals the darkness that lingers. It's a dangerous thing to look into. I swallowed hard, the connection between the mirror and the children's fate becoming painfully clear. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I appreciate it." As I left the cafe, the weight of the story clung to me, suffocating in its intensity. The laughter of the children now felt like a haunting echo, a reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded within those walls. I returned to the house, my mind racing with questions. The moment I stepped inside, the air felt electric, charged with an unsettling energy. I made my way to the living room, where the mirror waited, its surface still reflecting the dim glow of the candles. My heart raced, caught between fear and curiosity. I needed to confront whatever lay within that glass. I stood before it, my reflection staring back at me, but I felt a presence behind me, just beyond the threshold of my vision. I could almost hear the faintest whisper, a child's voice, soft yet pleading. "Help us." With a shaky breath, I leaned closer to the mirror, willing myself to look deeper. As I focused on the surface, the world around me began to blur, the colors bleeding together until I was enveloped in darkness. Suddenly, I was transported into a scene that unfolded like a film before my eyes. I found myself in the garden, vibrant and alive, where the Marlowe children played. Clara and Ethan chased little Lily, their laughter ringing out like music. But the scene shifted abruptly, the laughter turning into cries of terror. I gasped as the darkness descended, shadows creeping into the edges of the vision, swallowing the children whole. The once bright garden turned into a twisted nightmare, the flowers wilting as the shadows enveloped everything. No! I cried out, but my voice echoed into silence. The mirror shimmered, and I was pulled back to reality, gasping for breath. The house felt colder now, the shadows deeper. I stumbled back, fear clawing at my insides. The children were lost, trapped in a nightmare, and I had glimpsed their last moments of innocence before the darkness consumed them. My heart raced as the gravity of what I had seen settled in. I had to do something. I couldn't leave them trapped like that. I had to confront the darkness that had taken them, to uncover the truth behind their fate. With a newfound resolve, I turned back to the mirror, determination coursing through my veins. If I was to find a way to help them, I needed to delve deeper into the house's secrets to confront whatever malevolence lingered within. But as I prepared to face the unknown, a chilling thought crept into my mind. What if the darkness wanted me too? The tension in the room thickened as I steeled myself for what lay ahead. The flickering candlelight cast distorted shadows on the walls, and the mirror beckoned to me, its surface still rippling with the echoes of the visions I had just witnessed. Each breath felt heavy in my chest as I approached it again, the air thick with anticipation and dread. "Whatever you are," I whispered, my voice steadying, "I'm not afraid of you." With that declaration, I leaned closer to the mirror, focusing on the glass as the world around me began to blur once more. My heartbeat drummed in my ears, each thud amplifying the sense of impending confrontation. I felt a pull, like gravity drawing me in, and then the darkness swallowed me again. This time, I was enveloped in a haze of gray, an oppressive silence surrounding me. Gradually, shapes began to form, and I realized I was in the same garden, but it was darker now, twisted and forlorn. The laughter had ceased, replaced by a heavy stillness that set my nerves on edge. "Clara? Ethan? Lily?" I called out, my voice trembling as I scanned the area, searching for any sign of the children. There was no response, just an eerie silence that wrapped around me like a shroud. I took a cautious step forward, the grass beneath my feet damp and cool. The vibrant flowers I had seen before were now wilted and gray, their petals drooping as if they too felt the weight of despair. I could sense a presence lurking, an unseen force that filled the air with a palpable tension. "Show yourself," I demanded, the frustration boiling over. "I'm not afraid." But my bravado faltered as a gust of wind swept through the garden, carrying with it a whisper that sent chills racing down my spine. "Help us." The voice echoed around me, thin and wretched, and suddenly, shadows began to coalesce, forming dark figures that crept toward me from the corners of my vision. I took a step back, heart pounding, but the shadows surged forward, surrounding me. Panic set in as I struggled to breathe, the air growing thick with dread. "Please, don't hurt me," I cried, desperation clawing at my throat. "I just want to help." In that moment, the shadows paused, and a flicker of light pierced through the darkness. It illuminated a figure, a small girl, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. It was Lily. "Help us," she echoed, her voice trembling, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We're lost." "Lily!" I shouted, reaching out to her, but the shadows tightened their grip, pulling her further away. "I'm here. I won't let you go." But as I lunged forward, the darkness enveloped me, wrapping around me like tendrils, constricting my movements. I could see the other children now, their faces twisted in terror as they struggled against the shadowy binds. "Please, we can't escape," Clara cried, her voice filled with anguish. "You have to find a way." Frantically, I looked around, searching for anything that could help. The garden began to shift again, morphing into a chaotic scene of memories, flashes of the children's laughter fading into cries of despair. I could feel their pain, their fear, and it resonated within me, igniting a fierce determination to save them. Whatever holds you here, I'll face it, I declared, my voice growing stronger. I won't let you stay trapped in this nightmare. Suddenly, a blinding light burst forth, breaking through the darkness like a beacon. The shadows recoiled, screeching in fury as the light expanded, illuminating the garden and dispelling the fear that had clung to me. The children began to fade into the light, their expressions shifting from terror to relief. "Thank you," Lily whispered, her voice barely a breath as she vanished into the brightness. But the light was not just a savior, it was also a conduit for the darkness to retaliate. I could feel the oppressive force gathering, a cold wave that threatened to swallow the light whole. "No!" I shouted, fighting against the encroaching shadows. "You can't take them." As the shadows surged, I felt a surge of power within me, a connection to the children and the love that had once filled their home. Drawing on that energy, I fought back, forcing the light to expand further, pushing the darkness away. With a final, desperate cry, I shouted, "I release you. You are free." In that moment, the darkness recoiled, shrieking as the light consumed it. I felt the weight lifting, the shadows dissipating into nothingness. As the brightness enveloped me, I caught a final glimpse of the children, their faces illuminated with joy as they were released from their prison. Then, with a blinding flash, everything faded into darkness. I gasped, finding myself back in the living room, the mirror before me shimmering gently. The candlelight flickered, casting soft shadows on the walls. For a moment, I sat in stunned silence, my heart racing as I processed what had just happened. The house felt different now, lighter somehow. The oppressive weight that had clung to me was gone, replaced by a sense of peace. I could no longer hear the whispers of despair. Instead, a gentle warmth filled the air, wrapping around me like a comforting embrace. But even as I basked in the relief, a nagging thought remained: the darkness had not been vanquished entirely. The house was still haunted, still holding secrets that needed to be uncovered. I had freed the children, but at what cost? I rose from my seat, determination fueling my steps as I prepared to face whatever lay ahead. I would uncover the truth behind the Marlowe family's fate, confront the remnants of the darkness, and ensure that the children's memory would not be forgotten. The journey was far from over, and I was ready to face it head-on. The warmth of the house lingered around me, but I knew better than to let my guard down. I could still feel the shadows lurking just beneath the surface, ready to reclaim their hold. I needed to act quickly, to learn more about the darkness that had trapped the Marlowe children before it could reassert itself. I moved through the house, drawn to the corners where the light seemed to fade. The living room held the remnants of their joy, but the other rooms might reveal the truth I was searching for. As I ventured down the narrow hallway, I felt a chill brush against my skin, a reminder that I was not alone. I paused at the door of the first room on the left, my heart racing as I turned the knob. The door creaked open to reveal a small bedroom, untouched by time. A delicate bedspread lay neatly on the bed, adorned with playful patterns of animals. The room felt strangely inviting, but as I stepped inside, the air grew thick with sadness. I moved to the window, pulling back the curtain to let in more light. Sunlight streamed in, illuminating a wooden toy chest in the corner. It was covered in dust, but as I approached, I could see faint scratches on the surface, evidence of playful hands that once opened it. Gingerly, I lifted the lid, revealing a trove of forgotten toys, dolls with missing limbs, wooden trains, and stuffed animals that had lost their fluff. Each item held a memory, a fragment of the life that had once filled this home. But as I sifted through the toys, a sense of unease crept over me. Why had these treasures been left behind? Suddenly, a soft sound caught my attention, a whisper, barely audible, emanating from the closet. My heart raced as I approached, every instinct urging me to turn back. But curiosity propelled me forward. I opened the closet door slowly, and a chill rushed out to greet me. Inside, the walls were lined with drawings, childlike sketches covering every inch of the space. They depicted scenes of the children playing in the garden, their faces alight with joy, but as I examined them closer, I noticed the darkness creeping into the corners of the drawings, shadowing their laughter. It was as if the artist had sensed the impending doom even in those moments of happiness. One drawing stood out among the rest. It showed the three children huddled together, their faces twisted in fear, surrounded by swirling black shapes that resembled the shadows I had seen in my visions. Beneath the picture, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "The darkness will take us." My breath caught in my throat. The children had known. They had sensed the malevolence that lurked in their home. I stumbled back, feeling the walls close in around me. The weight of their fear pressed down, threatening to suffocate me. Why didn't anyone believe them? I murmured to myself, anger and sorrow mixing within me. I needed to find the parents. They had to have known something. I needed to piece together the puzzle of their disappearance. With a renewed sense of purpose, I left the room, moving through the house, each door a potential gateway to the past. I entered the bathroom, where the mirror reflected my anxious expression. I ran my fingers along the sink's edge, feeling the chill of the porcelain beneath my fingertips. There were no signs of struggle, no remnants of chaos. Everything felt too pristine, too perfect. I turned back toward the hallway, ready to explore the next room, when I caught a glimpse of something flickering in the corner of my eye. I froze, heart racing, as the shadows in the hallway began to swirl. A chill crept up my spine, and I could almost hear a whisper, a name escaping the darkness. Clara. I turned quickly, searching for the source of the sound, but the hallway was empty. The shadows flickered and danced, but they didn't seem to close in on me like before. Instead, they lingered, almost as if they were waiting, watching. My pulse quickened as I felt an undeniable pull to follow them, to uncover whatever truth lay hidden within the depths of the house. Guided by the shadows, I made my way down the hallway to the last door on the right. I opened it cautiously, and a wave of cool air rushed over me. The room was dark, the curtains drawn tight, but I sensed that something was here, something waiting. As I stepped inside, the shadows shifted, retreating slightly as if allowing me to enter. I reached for the curtains, pulling them back to let in the light. The room flooded with sunlight, revealing a dusty study. Books lined the shelves, their spines faded and worn, and a large desk sat in the center, cluttered with papers and old photographs. I moved closer to the desk, my fingers brushing against the papers. They were scattered notes, hastily written, filled with frantic scribbles and doodles. I squinted to read them, but most were illegible, a chaotic jumble of thoughts that hinted at madness. Then I spotted an old photograph, its edges frayed. Picking it up, I saw the Marlowe family, Clara, Ethan, and Lily, their faces radiant with joy as they played in the garden. But behind them, the house loomed ominously, its windows dark, as if hiding secrets of its own. I turned it over, hoping for a date or a message, but found only more confusion, just a word written in shaky handwriting, "Help." A feeling of dread washed over me. The parents had known about the darkness, too, and it had consumed them as well. They had searched for their children, but perhaps they had also succumbed to the very shadows they had tried to protect their family from. I needed to learn more about what happened after the children's disappearance. Suddenly, a sound echoed from behind me, a soft creaking that broke the silence. I whipped around, heart racing as the shadows flickered once again, coalescing into a shape. A figure emerged, a woman, her face pale and drawn, eyes wide with desperation. "Help," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. My heart dropped as recognition struck. It was Clara's mother, her spirit trapped in this place, her sorrow palpable. "Where are they?" I asked urgently, stepping forward. "What happened to your children?" But before she could respond, a sudden darkness engulfed the room. The shadows surged, drowning out the light, and I felt an oppressive force pressing down on me. "You shouldn't have come here," the darkness whispered, its voice a chilling hiss. "Leave while you can." "No!" I shouted defiantly, standing my ground. "I won't let you take them again." As the shadows closed in, Clara's mother reached out, her expression one of anguish. "You must find the truth," she cried. "They are still here, trapped in the darkness." With a rush of energy, I grasped the photograph tightly, feeling the warmth of the children's memories radiate through me. "I will not give up," I vowed, feeling the light within me surge as I pushed back against the shadows. The room began to shake, the walls vibrating with the clash of forces. I concentrated on the warmth of the light, pouring every ounce of my being into it. The shadows writhed and shrieked, unable to withstand the power of my resolve. With a final push, I cried out, "I free you. I free them all." In an explosive burst of light, the darkness shattered, splintering into 1,000 fragments that dissolved into the air. Clara's mother smiled faintly, her form flickering as if it were made of smoke. "Thank you," she whispered before vanishing entirely, leaving behind a lingering warmth. The room brightened, the shadows retreating, and for the first time, I felt the true weight of the house lift. I had confronted the darkness, but the journey was far from over. There were still pieces to gather, still echoes of the past to confront. As I steadied my breath, I looked around the room, determined to uncover the final truths hidden within these walls. I had freed Clara's spirit, but I needed to know what had truly happened to the Marlowe family and how to finally lay their memories to rest. With the darkness temporarily banished, I felt a wave of determination wash over me. Clara's mother had given me a clue, a hint that the truth I sought was still buried within the remnants of this house. The photographs and scattered notes were my only leads. I would not stop until I uncovered what had happened to the Marlowe family. I turned my attention back to the desk, searching for anything that might provide more insight. I rifled through the papers, feeling the urgency pulse within me. The more I uncovered, the clearer the picture became. Among the chaotic notes, one paper caught my eye. It was a neatly folded letter, and as I opened it, I felt the air grow heavy with anticipation. The handwriting was familiar, Clara's. "Dear Mom and Dad, I know you are worried, but I promise we are okay. The garden feels different now, like it's alive. Sometimes I can hear it whispering. Lily and Ethan say I'm being silly, but I can feel something watching us. It's not bad, I think, just strange. Please don't be mad at us for playing out here. We love you and miss you so much. Love, Clara." I felt a chill run through me as I read Clara's words. She had sensed the presence long before I had, and the garden had been a trap, luring them deeper into its darkness. It made sense now, the whispers in the garden, the shadows that danced just beyond the edges of their sight. They had been drawn in, unaware of the danger that lurked beneath the surface. But something else stirred within me, a nagging thought. Clara had mentioned playing outside. It meant there was a way for the children to escape, a chance for them to find help. I had to locate that very place. Feeling an urgency within me, I moved quickly through the study, scanning the shelves for any signs of the garden's secrets. My eyes landed on an old, dusty book perched precariously on a high shelf. It was bound in leather, its cover cracked with age. With a firm grip, I pulled it down, the pages yellowed and brittle. The title read Whispers of the Forgotten, Legends of the Marlowe Estate. Intrigued, I opened it, the scent of old paper filling my senses. Inside, I found stories of the estate's history, tales of the land that spoke to its inhabitants and the darkness that lurked beneath its beauty. One passage caught my attention. The garden of the Marlowe estate holds many secrets. It is said that those who listen too closely to its whispers may find themselves lost within its embrace. But the garden also possesses a hidden path, a means of escape for those who know how to listen. I felt a surge of hope. The garden was more than just a trap. It held the key to uncovering the truth and perhaps even saving the children's souls. But I needed to find this hidden path before the darkness could reclaim its hold. I hurried back to the living room, my heart pounding as I focused on the garden outside. The windows framed a view of the overgrown foliage, but it looked different now, alive, almost expectant. It was time to confront its secrets. Stepping outside, I was enveloped by the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers. The garden had a vibrant energy that pulsed around me, beckoning me closer. I could hear the whispers again, soft and soothing, but I remained wary. I would not let my guard down. As I walked deeper into the garden, the path twisted and turned, obscured by weeds and vines that had overgrown their boundaries. I felt drawn to a secluded corner where the flowers grew wild and unkempt. There was something different about this area, a sensation of energy coursing through the air, electric and alive. Suddenly, a glimmer of light caught my eye, emanating from beneath a thick tangle of ivy. My heart raced as I approached, pushing the greenery aside to reveal a stone archway, half hidden from view. The structure was covered in moss, the stones worn but sturdy, and it exuded an ancient presence. I stepped closer, feeling an inexplicable pull toward the archway. There was a peculiar warmth radiating from within, as if it were a doorway to another realm. Taking a deep breath, I placed my hand on the cold stone, and as I did, the whispers intensified, swirling around me in a whirlwind of sound. "Listen, follow," they urged, beckoning me forward. With a surge of courage, I stepped through the archway. Instantly, the air shifted, the light transforming from the muted tones of the garden to a brilliant, shimmering glow. I found myself standing in a vibrant realm, a stark contrast to the darkness I had just escaped. The colors were more vivid, the sounds of laughter ringing clear. Before me lay a breathtaking meadow, stretching endlessly under a sky filled with bright, swirling clouds. I could see the children, Clara, Ethan, and Lily, playing joyfully in the distance. Their laughter echoed like music, pure and unhindered. "Clara!" I called out, my voice carrying through the air. The children turned, their faces lighting up as they rushed toward me, joy radiating from their expressions. "You found us!" Clara exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We were so scared." "Where are we?" I asked, astonished by the beauty surrounding us. "This is the place where the garden takes you," Ethan explained, his voice filled with wonder. "But it can only hold you for so long." "What do you mean?" I pressed, concern lacing my tone. Lily's face clouded with sadness. The darkness won't let us go. We can't leave this place until someone finds a way to break its hold. But how? I implored, my heart heavy with their plight. I freed your mother. I thought that would help. Clara stepped closer, her expression solemn. It's not just her. There's a part of the darkness that still lingers here, tied to the garden. You must find it and confront it before we can truly be free. Where do I start? I asked, feeling the weight of their expectations. Listen to the whispers, Clara replied. They will guide you to the heart of the garden's darkness. You'll know when you're close. With their encouragement, I turned away from the meadow, ready to face the shadows once again. The whispers swirled around me, guiding my steps as I retraced my way back through the archway and into the garden. I could feel the tension rising, the shadows lurking just beyond the edges of the sunlight. The vibrant colors began to dim, the air thickening as the darkness coiled around me. But I pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. Suddenly, the whispers intensified, leading me toward a thicket of trees at the far end of the garden. The sun dimmed, and the air grew colder, sending shivers down my spine. I steeled myself, stepping into the darkness. As I navigated the thicket, the shadows swirled, forming grotesque shapes that flickered at the edges of my vision. Turn back, they hissed, their voices intertwining, echoing my deepest fears. No! I shouted, pushing forward. I won't let you keep me or the children trapped. The shadows shrieked in response, surging toward me like a wave. I felt their icy tendrils wrap around my limbs, constricting and pulling me down. I fought against the darkness, drawing on the strength of the children's laughter that still echoed in my heart. With every ounce of determination, I pushed through, demanding the shadows reveal their true form. Show yourself. I shouted, my voice resonating with power. You will not take them. Suddenly, the darkness coalesced, forming a figure cloaked in shadows, its features obscured. It loomed before me, radiating an aura of malevolence. You dare challenge me? It growled, a chilling wind sweeping through the thicket. I'm here to free the children, I declared, unwavering. You will not keep them captive any longer. The figure laughed, a sound that echoed like thunder. You think you can banish me? I am the essence of fear, of despair. I have existed long before you, and I will outlast you. Not if I have anything to say about it. I retorted, drawing on the memories of joy and love that had filled this house before the darkness took hold. The warmth surged within me, and I held it close, letting it shine like a beacon. Feel their fear, the figure hissed, lunging toward me. I felt the weight of the shadows pressing in, but I refused to yield. I am their fear, their sorrow. No! I roared, the light within me bursting forth. You are nothing without them. You cannot exist in the face of their love. With that proclamation, I unleashed the light, a brilliant radiance that pierced through the shadows. The figure recoiled, screeching in agony as the light engulfed it, unraveling the darkness piece by piece. No! This isn't over, it howled, but its voice faded into nothingness as the light consumed it completely. As the shadows dissipated, the oppressive weight lifted, and I could finally breathe again. The garden transformed before my eyes, the vibrant colors returning, flowers blooming anew as sunlight bathed the land. In the distance, I could see the children rushing toward me, their laughter ringing clear. They were free. I had done it. As they approached, Clara smiled brightly, her eyes shining with gratitude. You did it. You freed us. I couldn't have done it without you, I replied, feeling tears of relief spill down my cheeks. You showed me the way. Together, we stepped back into the meadow, where the air was filled with laughter and warmth. I could finally feel the love that had once filled this home, the memories of joy and laughter rising around us. As we stood together, the garden began to fade, the reality of the Marlowe estate blending into the warmth of the meadow. I knew it was time to let them go. Thank you for believing in me, Clara said, her voice soft yet strong. We will always remember you, Ethan added, his expression sincere. Now it's time for you to find your peace, I replied, my heart swelling with a mix of sadness and hope. You are free. As the light enveloped us, I felt the connection between us strengthen. The shadows had been vanquished, and their laughter echoed through the air, growing softer until it was just a whisper, a memory. In that moment, I understood. The house had been a prison, but love had broken its chains. The children would forever remain in my heart, and their memories would linger long after I left this place. And as the warmth of the sun embraced me, I knew that I would carry their light with me, a beacon to guide me through the darkest nights. When I awoke, I found myself back in the study of the Marlowe estate, the familiar scent of dust and wood filling my senses. My heart raced as I processed what had just happened. The children were free, their laughter still ringing in my ears, but the house was silent now, the shadows dispersed. Yet, something felt different. The air was heavy, almost electric, as if the house were holding its breath. I glanced around, taking in the remnants of the chaos, the scattered papers, the overturned chairs, reminders of the struggle I had just endured. I took a deep breath, allowing the reality of my surroundings to settle in. The Marlowe estate had been transformed, but I knew that the remnants of the darkness still lingered, hidden beneath the surface. The garden was at peace, but the house held its own secrets. A soft rustling caught my attention, pulling me from my thoughts. I turned to the door and saw a flicker of movement just beyond the threshold. My heart raced. Could it be Clara? Or perhaps the remnants of the darkness trying to reclaim what it had lost? I approached cautiously, opening the door to reveal the dim hallway. The walls were lined with faded portraits of the Marlowe family, their eyes seeming to follow me as I stepped into the corridor. Each step felt heavier than the last, the floorboards creaking underfoot, echoing the uncertainty in my mind. Is anyone there? I called out, my voice barely breaking the oppressive silence. No response. Just the stillness that felt almost tangible, wrapping around me like a thick fog. I glanced down the hallway, where a flicker of light caught my eye. One of the doors at the far end was ajar, an inviting glow spilling into the darkened space. With cautious steps, I made my way toward the door, drawn by the light and an inexplicable urge to uncover what lay beyond. As I reached the threshold, I hesitated, peering into the room. The glow illuminated the dusty space, revealing a small library filled with books that appeared untouched by time. The air buzzed with energy, and I felt a strange compulsion to enter. I stepped inside, the wooden floorboards creaking softly beneath me. The walls were lined with shelves, filled to the brim with volumes of various sizes. It felt like a sanctuary amidst the chaos. As I wandered through the aisles, I noticed a large, ornate book resting on a pedestal in the center of the room. The cover was embossed with intricate designs, shimmering under the soft light. My fingers tingled with anticipation as I approached it. I opened the book, and the pages seemed to shimmer with secrets, the words swirling before my eyes. As I read, a chill ran down my spine. It contained the history of the Marlowe estate, tales of its founders, and dark secrets that whispered of curses and forgotten memories. One passage caught my attention, detailing the origins of the garden's dark presence. It spoke of a hidden ritual performed by the Marlowe family intended to bind the garden to their will. But the ritual had gone awry, creating an entity that thrived on fear and despair, forever tied to the land. To break the bond, one must confront the heart of the garden, unearth the truth hidden within, and face the shadows that dwell there. My heart raced. The ritual was the key. The children had been trapped by the shadows, but the garden had also been their prison. If I could find a way to sever that connection, I might finally bring peace to this place. Determined, I closed the book and looked around the library, seeking any clues that could guide me. A flash of movement caught my eye, a shadow darting past the window. My heart pounded. The darkness had not been completely vanquished. It was still here, lurking just beyond the threshold. I rushed to the window, peering outside. The garden seemed tranquil, bathed in soft light, but I knew better. The whispers had returned, subtle and insistent, urging me to listen closely. Find the heart, confront the truth, they murmured, their voices intertwining like the tendrils of the vines that enveloped the estate. Feeling a renewed sense of purpose, I stepped back into the hallway and made my way toward the garden once more. The path was clear now, illuminated by the light that had come from the library. With every step, I could feel the weight of the shadows pressing against me, trying to draw me back, but I pushed forward. As I entered the garden, the air shimmered with energy and the flowers swayed gently, as if welcoming me. I felt a sense of calm wash over me, but it was short-lived as the whispers grew louder, urging me toward the thicket where I had confronted the darkness before. With determination fueling my steps, I navigated through the lush foliage, my heart pounding in my chest. I could see the stone archway in the distance, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. As I approached, the whispers swirled around me, growing louder and more insistent. Confront the heart, uncover the truth, they echoed, intertwining with my thoughts. Reaching the archway, I paused for a moment, gathering my strength. I could feel the darkness lurking nearby, its presence heavy in the air. But I was no longer afraid. I had faced it once and emerged victorious. Now, I was ready to confront the very essence of its power. Stepping through the archway, I was enveloped in light, the meadow opening up before me once again. But this time, the laughter was muted, overshadowed by a sense of urgency. The children were not here. I felt their absence like a gaping void. Clara! I called out, my voice echoing in the silence. Ethan! Lily! But there was no response. The meadow felt empty, the vibrant colors dulling, replaced by an oppressive weight. I realized then that I needed to find the heart of the darkness within the garden, to confront it and bring the children back. Determined, I focused on the whispers, allowing them to guide me deeper into the meadow. As I moved forward, the energy shifted, the shadows swirling around me, thickening with every step. Face us, they hissed, their voices dripping with malice. You cannot escape. I'm not afraid of you. I shouted, feeling a surge of defiance. You will not take me or the children. The shadows surged forward, coiling around me, but I pressed on, drawing on the memories of joy and love that had filled the house. They gave me strength, fueling my resolve. As I approached a clearing at the center of the meadow, the air thickened, the whispers coiling into a single voice, deep and resonant. You dare to challenge the darkness? You will regret this. Enough! I shouted, my voice echoing through the clearing. You will not keep the children trapped. I will break this curse. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and a figure emerged from the shadows, coalescing into a grotesque form. It was the embodiment of the darkness, a swirling mass of fear and despair. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, piercing through the gloom. "You think you can banish me?" it roared, its voice reverberating like thunder. "I am eternal. I feed on fear, on the sorrow of those who dwell here. I won't let you," I declared, feeling the light within me swell. "You may thrive on fear, but I carry the love of those you've trapped." With that declaration, I unleashed the light, pouring my heart into it, letting it radiate outward. The darkness recoiled, its form wavering as the light engulfed it. "No! This cannot be," it screeched, the shadows twisting violently as the light surged around us. The energy crackled in the air, and I felt the very fabric of the garden shift. I pushed forward, determined to sever the bond that held the darkness here. "You are nothing without the fear you create. Your power is an illusion." With one final burst of energy, I forced the light through the shadows, watching as they writhed in agony, unraveling before my eyes. "You will not take them," I shouted, the words echoing with conviction. As the light consumed the darkness, a brilliant flash filled the clearing, illuminating the shadows until they vanished entirely. The air grew still, and I felt the weight of despair lift, replaced by a profound sense of peace. The children appeared before me, their faces alight with joy. "You did it!" Clara exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. "You freed us!" I rushed to them, enveloping them in a warm embrace, my heart swelling with relief. "I couldn't have done it without you." Together, we stood in the clearing, the light surrounding us, a radiant reminder of the love that had conquered the darkness. The whispers faded into the background, replaced by a gentle breeze that rustled through the leaves. "We are free," Ethan said, his voice filled with wonder. "Yes," I replied, my heart full. "And we will always remember the strength that brought us here." As the garden transformed around us, I knew that this was only the beginning. The Marlowe estate would forever hold the memories of the past, but now it would also stand as a testament to the power of love and the resilience of the human spirit. The shadows had been vanquished, and the whispers of the garden had turned into a song, a celebration of hope and healing. As the garden settled into its new form, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. The vibrant colors of the flowers seemed to dance in celebration, their petals unfurling as if to greet the sunlight that streamed through the canopy above. It was a stark contrast to the darkness that had once cloaked this place, and I found solace in the beauty surrounding us. "Where will we go now?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her small hands fidgeted nervously, the innocence of childhood evident in her wide eyes. I knelt down to meet her gaze, my heart aching at the thought of their past suffering. "You can go anywhere you want," I replied softly. "You are free now. The garden is yours to explore." Ethan's face lit up. "We can finally play without fear," he exclaimed, his excitement bubbling over. He tugged Clara's hand, and together they raced toward the blooming flowers, their laughter echoing through the air like music. I watched them go, a smile breaking across my face as I felt the warmth of hope envelop me. But beneath that joy was a lingering thought: what would happen to me now that the darkness had been vanquished? The garden had been a place of suffering, but it had also been a source of strength and purpose for me. As I turned to leave the clearing, I noticed a shimmering path weaving through the garden. It glimmered under the sunlight, drawing me toward its entrance. Curiosity piqued, I followed the trail, the soft hum of life surrounding me. The path led me to a small gazebo adorned with climbing vines and blooming flowers, the air thick with the sweet scent of jasmine. I stepped inside, feeling the warmth wrap around me like a comforting embrace. In the center stood a round table, upon which rested an ornate box. I approached it, my heart racing. What secrets did it hold? As I opened the box, I was met with a collection of objects, small trinkets, faded photographs, and letters, each imbued with memories of the Marlowe family. One photograph caught my attention. It was of the Marlowe children, smiling brightly, their faces radiant with joy. Their eyes sparkled with the innocence of childhood, completely untainted by the darkness that had consumed them. I felt a pang of sorrow mixed with relief. These children were free now, no longer prisoners of their own home. As I picked up a small, delicate locket, it sprang open, revealing a tiny portrait of a woman, perhaps their mother. I could almost feel her warmth, her love radiating from the image. In that moment, I understood that I was not just a visitor to this place. I had become part of its story, intertwined with the lives of those who had once suffered here. Tears welled in my eyes as I placed the locket back in the box. This house had been a conduit of pain, but it had also birthed strength, resilience, and ultimately, freedom. Will you stay with us? Clara's voice broke through my reverie, pulling me back to reality. The children had returned, their faces alight with curiosity. I don't know, I replied honestly, feeling a mixture of longing and uncertainty. I have my own life outside this garden. But you helped us, Ethan said, his brow furrowed with concern. You can be our friend forever. A wave of warmth washed over me. I knelt down to their level, the gentle breeze caressing my cheeks. I will always be your friend, I promised, feeling the bond we had created through our shared experiences. But I also have to go home and tell others about the magic and the memories we shared here. Lily's face fell slightly, but then she nodded. Okay, but you'll come back to visit, right? I smiled, touched by their sincerity. I promise I will come back. You have all taught me so much about courage and love. As I stood up, the shadows of the past seemed to melt away, replaced by a bright future. I felt a sudden urge to document everything that had happened in the Marlowe estate, to share the story of the children and the darkness that had once loomed over them. I walked back toward the gazebo, the children following closely behind. I'm going to write a book about you all, I said, glancing back at them. I want everyone to know what bravery looks like and how love can conquer even the darkest of fears. Clara beamed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Can we help? Of course, I replied, my heart swelling with gratitude. We'll work together to tell your story. With renewed purpose, we gathered in the gazebo, brainstorming ideas for the book, sharing laughter and joy as the sun began to set behind the garden. The shadows of the past felt distant, and the laughter of the children was a sweet reminder of the resilience that had flourished amidst the despair. As twilight descended, I knew that I would carry the memories of this place with me, forever changed by the love I had witnessed. The Marlowe estate would remain a part of my heart, a testament to the healing power of friendship and the strength that lay within us all. But as I turned to the children one last time, a sudden chill swept through the air. I felt a familiar presence behind me, a whisper echoing in the twilight. You think you can escape the past? My heart raced as I spun around, the shadows re-emerging, their forms twisting in the fading light. Panic surged through me, but then I looked at the children, their faces a mix of confusion and fear. No! I shouted, standing protectively in front of them. You cannot take them again. The darkness writhed, its voice a haunting melody. You think you can resist? You belong to me. With every ounce of courage I could muster, I reached deep within, summoning the light that had once banished the shadows. You have no power here. I declared, the energy pulsing through me, illuminating the garden. As the light surged forward, the darkness recoiled, but it began to morph, taking on form I had never seen before. Instead of the grotesque figure from before, it appeared as the Marlowe family, an amalgamation of their faces twisted in sorrow. "Free us," they cried, their voices mingling with the wind. "We are bound to this place, forever trapped in the memories." "No!" I cried, tears streaming down my cheeks. "You are free. You do not have to be a prisoner of your past." As I spoke those words, the light around me intensified, wrapping around the shadowy figures, enveloping them in warmth. "You can let go of the pain. You have the power to move on." For a moment, silence fell over the garden, the shadows hesitating as if contemplating my words. Then, with a surge of energy, they began to dissolve, their forms dissipating like mist in the morning sun. "We are free," they whispered, their voices fading into the gentle breeze. The garden brightened, the shadows lifting as the last remnants of the past vanished. The air was filled with a sense of peace, a profound stillness that resonated with the truth of what had transpired. As I turned back to the children, I felt a warmth enveloping me. The darkness had been vanquished once and for all, and the Marlowe estate stood transformed, a sanctuary of love and memories. "We did it!" Clara exclaimed, her eyes shining with joy. "Yes, we did," I replied, my heart swelling with pride. Together, we had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. As the stars began to twinkle above us, I knew that this was not the end, but a new beginning. The Marlowe estate would forever be a beacon of hope, a reminder of the strength that lies within us all. With the children by my side, I stepped forward into the light, ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that together we could face any darkness that lay ahead. Evening in a cafe. I sat at the small, round table by the window, a steaming cup of coffee cradled in my hands. The sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows across the pavement outside. The familiar chatter of the cafe enveloped me, but there was something different about this evening. I had always found solace in this cozy corner, where the aroma of fresh pastries mixed with the scent of coffee, creating an atmosphere of warmth. Yet, tonight, an unsettling chill settled over me, as if an unseen presence loomed just beyond my peripheral vision. As I sipped my drink, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced around the room, taking in the eclectic mix of patrons, couples engrossed in hushed conversations, a group of friends laughing at a nearby table, and a solitary figure in the far corner, hunched over a book. It was the solitary figure that drew my attention. There was something about him, his eyes, perhaps, that sent a shiver down my spine. They seemed to bore into me, unblinking, a slight, almost imperceptible smile playing at the corners of his lips. I quickly looked away, trying to dismiss the creeping anxiety. Was I imagining things? This cafe had always been a haven, a refuge from the outside world, and yet, as the dimming light cast flickering shadows, a sense of foreboding crept into my mind. As the minutes passed, I couldn't help but notice that the figure in the corner had not shifted his gaze. His smile remained unchanged, like a mask that concealed something far more sinister. I tried to focus on my surroundings, the clinking of cups, the soft music playing overhead, but every time I glanced back, he was still there, watching. The tension began to melt, a tight knot forming in my stomach. It was as if the air around me had thickened, making it difficult to breathe. I glanced at the door, contemplating escape, but something held me back. The cafe felt like a cocoon, yet tonight it had turned into a trap. It was then that I noticed another pair of eyes fixed on me from across the room, 2 women at a table, whispering, their heads tilted towards each other, their gazes flicking back to me with those same unsettling smiles. A cold sweat broke out along my spine. Why was this happening? Was I overreacting? I forced myself to breathe deeply, trying to quell the panic rising within me. The laughter around me seemed distant, muffled as though I were submerged underwater. I could feel my heart racing, thumping against my chest as I tried to reassure myself. Perhaps they were just curious, intrigued by the lone figure sipping coffee and scribbling in a notebook. But the way they smiled, as if they shared a secret I wasn't privy to, sent chills down my spine. I had always been a little different, an introvert who found comfort in solitude rather than the clamor of social gatherings. But tonight felt different. I felt exposed, vulnerable in a way I couldn't articulate. I glanced at my watch. Time was dragging. As the last remnants of sunlight faded and the cafe lights flickered on, the atmosphere shifted. The shadows grew longer, creeping along the walls like dark tendrils reaching for me. I considered leaving, but my legs felt heavy, as if they were rooted to the ground. The figure in the corner stood up suddenly, his movements jerky and unnatural. He had a strange aura, as if he didn't quite belong to this world. I could barely comprehend it when he began to walk toward me, that haunting smile still plastered on his face. "Evening," he said, his voice smooth yet chilling, as if each word was laced with something sinister. I could only manage a nod, my throat tightening. I felt the eyes of the 2 women bore into me, their whispers increasing, fueling the growing dread inside. The cafe, once a sanctuary, had morphed into a stage for some twisted performance, and I was the unwilling star. As the minutes crawled by, my mind raced. Who were these people? What did they want? The room felt like it was closing in, the walls pressing against me, and the whispers became a cacophony, drowning out my thoughts. I had to get out. But before I could gather the courage to stand, the figure leaned closer, his breath cold against my ear. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, and in that moment, I understood that I was no longer safe. His words hung in the air, a chilling proclamation that sent a jolt of fear through me. The cafe, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt like a cage. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage as I struggled to process the gravity of his statement. What did he mean by that? Who was he? Before I could respond, he pulled back slightly, his gaze boring into mine with an intensity that made me want to look away. The whispers from the 2 women intensified, a low hum that filled the silence between us. I could feel their eyes on me, dissecting my every reaction. "Don't you see?" he continued, his voice low and conspiratorial. "You are in danger. You don't belong here." The cafe suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in around me. I could sense the others watching, their smiles transforming into something far more sinister. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, my voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want?" His smile widened, and I was struck by the thought that it was the smile of a predator, one that reveled in the fear of its prey. "I'm just here to warn you," he said, taking a step back but never breaking eye contact. "There are things you don't understand, things you cannot see. You think you're safe, but the shadows are watching, waiting." My mind raced as I scanned the room. The couple in the corner had stopped talking, their attention fully on us. The group of friends had fallen silent, their laughter replaced by a tense anticipation. I felt trapped, cornered by invisible forces. "Leave now," he urged, his tone shifting from sinister to pleading. "You need to go. They're coming for you." I wanted to believe him, my instincts screamed for me to escape. Yet, part of me hesitated. What if he was just another delusional character in a city teeming with the odd and the eccentric? But the fear in his eyes told a different story, one I couldn't ignore. Suddenly, the two women stood up, their expressions shifting from amusement to something far more menacing. "You should listen to him," one of them called out, her voice dripping with malice. "You don't want to make them angry." A cold wave washed over me. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Make who angry?" I demanded, my voice stronger than I felt. "Don't provoke them," the second woman chimed in, her smile widening. "They're always hungry." The atmosphere thickened with tension, and I felt an overwhelming urge to flee. The shadows seemed to deepen around me, curling and twisting in ways that defied reality. I looked back at the man who had warned me, searching for a glimmer of reassurance. Instead, I found his gaze darkening, filled with a mixture of pity and fear. "I wish I could protect you," he said softly, his expression now grave. "But you need to trust me. Leave while you still can." In that moment, the cafe's familiar charm transformed into something grotesque and alien. My heart pounded in my chest, a primal instinct urging me to run. I rose from my chair, and the world around me seemed to move in slow motion. As I turned to the exit, the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar, voices blending into a chaotic symphony of dread. The patrons watched, their expressions a blend of amusement and anticipation, as if they were witnesses to some grand spectacle. I felt their eyes on me, cold and judgmental, as I pushed through the cafe doors. The cool night air hit me like a wave, a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside. I stumbled into the street, gasping for breath, my mind racing with confusion and fear. I had escaped, but at what cost? I glanced back at the cafe, its warm lights flickering like the embers of a dying fire. The figure stood in the window, his face now a shadowy silhouette, and I could have sworn he was still smiling, his expression one of resignation, as if he knew the inevitable fate that awaited me. With trembling hands, I fished my phone out of my pocket, my fingers shaking as I tried to dial for help. But as I looked around, the street felt eerily deserted, the usual hum of life replaced by a suffocating silence. My breath quickened. I could sense that something was not right. Where could I go? Who could I trust? The cafe had been a sanctuary, but now it was a haunting memory, a place where shadows danced and whispers beckoned. And then, just as I was about to step away, I heard it, a soft giggle behind me. I turned, and the two women from the cafe stood a few feet away, their eyes glinting with mischief. "You thought you could just leave?" one of them taunted, taking a step forward. "You're part of the show now." Panic surged through me as I took a step back, the reality of my situation crashing down like a wave. They were closing in, their smiles widening with each passing moment. My mind raced with frantic thoughts, but one stood out above all the rest. I needed to escape. The woman with the darker hair stepped closer, her gaze locking onto mine, holding me in place as if I were caught in a spider's web. "You don't get to leave so easily," she purred, her voice silky and sweet but dripping with malice. "You've already piqued our interest." I turned on my heel, heart pounding in my chest, and sprinted down the street. The cool night air bit at my skin as I ran, my breath coming in short gasps. The sound of footsteps followed closely behind, echoing in the stillness, a cruel reminder that I was not alone. I darted through an alley, desperation guiding my movements as I moved in and out of shadows. My mind raced with possible escape routes, but each turn seemed to lead me deeper into darkness. The city I once knew felt alien and hostile, every shadow a potential threat. Just as I rounded a corner, I slammed into a figure, the impact knocking the breath from my lungs. I stumbled back, my heart racing even faster as I looked up to see a man standing before me. He was tall, with disheveled hair and a concerned expression. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice laced with genuine worry. I shook my head, the fear bubbling to the surface. "No. They're coming for me. We have to get out of here." Before I could explain further, I heard the unmistakable sound of laughter echoing from the alley I had just fled. The man's brow furrowed as he took a step back, glancing over his shoulder, sensing the impending danger. "Who?" "The women from the cafe. They're not normal." My voice trembled as I spoke, each word a desperate plea for understanding. "Cafe?" He looked at me with a mixture of confusion and concern. "What are you talking about?" Suddenly, the laughter grew louder, more sinister, and I felt the panic clawing at my throat. "Please, you have to believe me," I pleaded, my eyes wide with fear. "They're following me. They want to." Before I could finish, the laughter turned into a cacophony of voices, and I could see shadows moving in the darkness behind him. The figure's eyes widened as he turned, taking a step back. "What the hell is going on?" he muttered, glancing between me and the encroaching figures. I could see them now, the two women flanking a shadowy figure, the man from the cafe. Their expressions were twisted into grotesque masks of amusement, like predators toying with their prey. "Run!" I shouted, pushing past the bewildered man as I darted down the street, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I could hear their footsteps behind me, growing closer, the sounds of their laughter echoing through the night. I turned down another alley, my breath coming in ragged gasps, but the darkness felt suffocating. I glanced back and saw that the man had hesitated, caught in the web of confusion and fear. But as I moved further away, I could see him shaking his head, his instincts battling against the inexplicable chaos surrounding us. Then, something unexpected happened. The laughter stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that hung heavily in the air. I turned, still running, and glanced back over my shoulder. They were gone. Just like that, the chaos had ceased, leaving me standing alone in the alley, panting and bewildered. My heart raced, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe I was free. But a gnawing doubt settled in my stomach. This wasn't over. I stumbled to the mouth of the alley, where the streetlights flickered overhead. The streets were eerily quiet, but I knew I couldn't linger. I needed to find a safe place, somewhere that could shield me from whatever darkness had been unleashed. I made my way to a nearby park, the trees standing like sentinels in the moonlight. The rustling leaves whispered secrets that I couldn't decipher, but I pressed on, desperate for a moment of solitude. As I entered the park, I caught my breath and leaned against a bench, the cool metal grounding me. I scanned my surroundings, but the shadows felt different here. They were no longer menacing. Instead, they embraced the calm of the night. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me. The laughter, the predatory gazes, it was all too vivid, too real. I pulled out my phone again, but there was no signal, no lifeline to the outside world. I felt the walls of isolation closing in once more, and my mind raced with the events of the evening. How had a simple evening at a cafe turned into this? I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing, but the whispers of doubt crept back in, taunting me. I had to make sense of this, had to understand what was happening. And then, just as I thought I might find a moment of peace, I heard it again, the soft giggle, a reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the edge of the light. I turned sharply, my heart racing as I searched the shadows. There was nothing there, but the feeling of being watched returned, more potent than before. My instincts screamed at me to run again, to keep moving, but where could I go? The park was empty, the trees casting elongated shadows that danced in the night. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Perhaps it was just my imagination, a product of the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. But as I prepared to leave the bench, I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach, and there they stood, the two women, their faces illuminated by the pale moonlight, smiles stretching across their lips like a macabre mask. "Did you really think you could escape?" one of them taunted, her voice sweet yet laced with venom. "Welcome back to the game," the other added, her eyes glinting with delight. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, realization crashing over me like a tidal wave. This was no ordinary encounter. This was a twisted invitation into their world, a world where shadows danced and laughter echoed with menace. I stood frozen, my heart pounding as the two women approached. Their smiles twisted, morphing from playful to predatory, and a surge of adrenaline shot through me, fueling my instincts to flee. But where could I run? The shadows felt like they were closing in, and the trees loomed above me, casting eerie silhouettes that seemed to shift and sway with malevolent intent. "Why are you doing this?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling as I fought to maintain some semblance of composure. "What do you want from me?" The woman with the darker hair stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she spoke, her tone dripping with amusement. "We just want to play, sweetie. You made it all the way to the cafe, and now you're here with us. Isn't it thrilling?" Thrilling? The word sent a jolt of revulsion through me. My mind raced, trying to comprehend their twisted game. "This isn't fun," I shouted, desperation spilling into my voice. "You're scaring me." The second woman laughed softly, a sound that sent chills down my spine. "Oh, we're not here to scare you. We're here to enlighten you. You stepped into a different world, one where the ordinary rules no longer apply." I glanced around the park, half expecting someone to intervene, to help me. But the path was empty, the streetlights flickering in a rhythm that felt eerily synchronized with my racing heart. "I don't want any part of this," I shouted, backing away from them. "Just leave me alone." "Leave you alone?" The darker-haired woman smirked, her eyes gleaming with a manic light. "But you're just getting started. We're all so curious about you." "What do you mean?" I stammered, backing away further until my back hit the rough bark of a tree, trapping me between it and their encroaching figures. "We want to know how you'll respond when the shadows start playing their tricks," she said, taking another step forward. "You see, the world is much darker than you think. It's filled with secrets, and tonight, you're the star of our little show." A wave of nausea washed over me as the implications of her words sank in. This wasn't just a strange encounter, they were playing a game with my life, toying with my fears like puppeteers in a sinister play. I could feel the weight of their gazes, piercing and cold, as they watched my every reaction. "I won't play," I declared, summoning whatever strength I had left. "I refuse to be part of your sick game." The women exchanged glances, their smiles fading for a moment, and I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps I had frightened them away. But that hope was short-lived as they burst into laughter, a sound that echoed through the empty park, sharp and jarring. "Oh, but you already are," one of them shouted, her voice echoing with twisted delight. "You think you can just walk away? You think you can refuse?" The laughter intensified, surrounding me like a storm, and I felt the weight of their malicious joy pressing down. My breath came in ragged gasps as I searched for a way out, but the path behind me felt blocked, as if the very shadows had come to life, ensnaring me in their web. "Let me go!" I screamed, desperation clawing at my throat. I pushed against the tree, feeling the rough bark against my back, but there was no escape. Then, without warning, the man from the cafe stepped out from the shadows, his face a mask of determination. "Enough!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the laughter like a blade. "You don't have to do this." The two women turned their attention to him, their expressions shifting from amusement to annoyance. "And who are you to interfere?" one of them snapped, her voice laced with venom. "I'm someone who won't let you harm her," he replied, stepping forward, protective yet wary. "You've had your fun. Let her go." The tension crackled in the air as the women's eyes narrowed. "You think you can just waltz in here and play hero?" the other scoffed. "You don't know what you're dealing with." I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. This man had risked himself to confront them, and for a moment, I believed I might have a chance. "Please," I urged him, my voice trembling. "Help me." He glanced back at me, his expression resolute. "I will," he said firmly, "but you have to trust me. Stay close." Before I could respond, the women lunged toward him, their laughter turning into shrill screams. The man moved with surprising agility, dodging their grasp as he pulled me behind him, creating a barrier between us and the impending danger. "Run!" he shouted, and without thinking, I did. I darted to the left, my instincts kicking in as I fled deeper into the park. The sounds of their laughter faded into the distance, replaced by the pounding of my heart and the rush of adrenaline surging through my veins. I could hear footsteps behind me, but the darkness enveloped me like a cloak, urging me onward. I glanced back to see the man still fighting against them, his movements fierce and determined. "Keep going," he yelled, and I pressed on, my breath coming in quick, desperate gasps. The path twisted and turned, the shadows seeming to shift and dance around me. I had no idea where I was headed, but instinct drove me forward, away from the danger that loomed behind. Suddenly, I burst out of the trees and onto a dimly lit street, the lights flickering overhead like distant stars. I turned to look back at the park, my heart racing with a mix of fear and hope. The man was still battling the women, but they were gaining ground. "Go," he shouted again, his voice strained but fierce. "Get help. You have to warn others." I hesitated for a moment, torn between staying and fleeing, but the weight of their threat hung heavy in the air. I could feel the shadows creeping closer, the fear paralyzing my thoughts. I took a deep breath and turned to run down the street, my feet pounding against the pavement as I raced toward the safety of the lights. I had to find help, to escape the nightmare that had unfolded. But as I ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The darkness had not been vanquished, it was only waiting, lurking just beyond the edge of my vision, eager to ensnare me once more. The street felt surreal as I raced past flickering streetlights, their weak glow offering little comfort against the encroaching darkness behind me. My heart hammered in my chest, each beat a reminder of the danger I was fleeing. I couldn't shake the images of those women, their predatory smiles, and the thrill they derived from my fear. Panic surged again as I turned a corner and stumbled into a small convenience store, the jingle of the doorbell ringing in my ears like a warning. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed, casting harsh shadows that seemed to stretch and recoil as I dashed down the narrow aisles. "Excuse me," I gasped, spotting the cashier, a middle-aged man with weary eyes. "You have to help me. There are..." Before I could finish, the door swung open and I froze. The two women stepped inside, their laughter echoing in the small space, the sound sharp and mocking. They scanned the store, their eyes landing on me with a predatory gleam. "Is this where you thought you could hide?" one of them cooed, her voice a syrupy menace that sent a chill down my spine. How quaint. I felt a surge of desperation as I backed away, searching for an exit. The cashier's eyes widened in confusion and fear, and he instinctively stepped back, hands raised as if to ward off the impending doom. "Please, you have to call the police," I pleaded, my voice cracking with panic. "Call the police?" The other woman laughed, her smile wide and unsettling. "Oh, sweetheart, that won't do you any good. They won't believe you." The cashier fumbled for his phone, glancing nervously between me and the approaching threat. "What's going on?" he stammered, the fear evident in his voice. I took a step closer to him, desperate to keep the distance between me and the two women. "They're not normal. They're..." Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the air felt heavy, as if the very atmosphere was shifting. I turned to see the women standing closer, their features twisting in delight. "You really should have stayed at the cafe," one of them said, her eyes gleaming with amusement. I felt the panic rising, choking me. "Get away from me," I shouted, lunging toward the cashier as he stood frozen in shock. You don't know what they're capable of. But it was too late. The women advanced, their movements fluid and graceful, almost unnatural. I could feel the air crackle with tension, the space around us thickening with a palpable dread. In a flash, one of them reached for the cashier, her hand darting out like a striking snake. "Just a little fun, dear," she purred, her fingers curling around his wrist. He gasped, eyes wide, as if he were caught in a dream he couldn't wake from. "Stop!" I screamed, lunging forward in a futile attempt to save him. But before I could reach them, the other woman stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Such a spirited little thing," she said, tilting her head, her smile unsettlingly sweet. "But you can't save everyone." As I struggled to find a way around her, I felt the world tilt. The store began to blur at the edges, the fluorescent lights flickering more violently. Shadows danced along the walls, whispering secrets that I couldn't understand. "Help!" the cashier shouted, panic lacing his voice. I turned to see the woman pulling in closer, her smile widening as she leaned in, her lips brushing against his ear. "You'll see soon enough," she whispered, her words laced with an intoxicating chill. Desperation clawed at me, and I felt the instinct to flee overwhelm any sense of rationality. I bolted toward the exit, but the moment I reached the door, it slammed shut with a force that rattled the glass. I turned back, breathless and panicked, only to find the women had drawn closer, leaving the cashier trembling in their grasp. "Don't you want to see what happens next?" one of them taunted, her voice echoing in the confined space. "I want to leave," I shouted, pounding my fists against the door. "Let him go." But my pleas fell on deaf ears. The women began to circle, their laughter intertwining with the flickering lights, creating a disorienting rhythm that made my head spin. I felt trapped, the walls closing in around me, and I fought to keep my mind clear. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a commotion outside. Voices raised in alarm, the sound of sirens wailing in the distance. "Please! Help!" I screamed, pounding on the glass door again, my desperation spilling over. "Somebody!" The women paused, their expressions shifting from amusement to annoyance. "Oh, this won't do," one of them said, rolling her eyes. "We don't want anyone else to spoil our little party." The second woman smirked, her gaze locking onto mine. "Let's wrap this up, shall we?" With that, the world around me erupted into chaos. The lights flickered violently, casting erratic shadows that danced along the walls. The cashier shrieked, and I saw the terror in his eyes as the women turned their full attention toward him, their expressions transforming into something more sinister. In a moment of instinct, I lunged for the door, throwing my weight against it. To my surprise, it swung open, and I tumbled into the cool night air, the cacophony of sirens growing louder as I stumbled out into the street. I glanced back at the store, the two women standing in the doorway, their faces illuminated by the harsh glow of the lights. They watched me with predatory glee, laughter spilling from their lips like a haunting melody. I didn't stop to catch my breath. I took off running, my heart racing as I darted toward the sounds of sirens and commotion. The night air felt alive with danger, but I pressed on, desperate to escape the darkness that threatened to consume me. I reached the edge of the street just as police cars skidded to a halt, officers jumping out with urgency. "What's going on?" one of them shouted, rushing toward me as I stumbled to a halt, gasping for air. "Please! They're coming for me!" I cried, the words spilling out in a rush. "Those women! You have to help!" The officer looked past me, scanning the darkness for the threat. "Where are they?" I turned to point back at the convenience store, but as I looked, my breath caught in my throat. They were gone. The doorway was empty, as if they had never been there at all. "Ma'am," the officer urged, concern etched on his face. "Are you all right?" I shook my head, my chest heaving as the reality of what had just happened sunk in. No. They were right there. They were going to hurt us. Another officer joined us, his expression grim as he surveyed the scene. "We need to check inside," he said, moving past me toward the store. "No. You can't," I shouted, fear clawing at my insides. "You don't understand." But they were already moving, their radios crackling with urgency as they entered the store. I stood frozen, my heart racing, the weight of their indifference crushing me. I turned to look down the street, where the darkness seemed to swell and shift, eager to reclaim its lost prey. "Stay here, miss," one of the officers called back to me, but I felt a compulsion to run again, to flee from the reality that was closing in. But just as I turned, I heard a voice behind me, smooth and seductive. "Oh, darling, you can't escape us that easily." I whirled around, my heart dropping as I saw the two women standing a few feet away, their expressions unchanged. The world around me faded, leaving only the chilling laughter that echoed in the depths of my mind. They were back, and there was nowhere left to run. I stood frozen, caught between disbelief and terror as the two women's laughter echoed through the night air. My mind raced, struggling to grasp the impossibility of their return. Just moments ago, I had fled into the arms of safety, but now, with their presence looming over me, I felt the world begin to tilt again. "Why won't you just leave me alone?" I managed to choke out, my voice trembling with fear. The sirens wailed in the distance, but they felt like a fading echo, distant and futile against the encroaching shadows. "Leave you alone?" the darker-haired woman repeated, her voice dripping with mockery. "Oh, sweetie, we've only just begun. You're far too interesting to let go." The other woman stepped closer, her eyes sparkling with wicked delight. "You're a rare find, you know. Most people wouldn't be so fun to play with." I took a step back, trying to regain some distance, but they advanced slowly, almost as if savoring my fear. Panic surged within me, and I glanced back at the officers who had just entered the store, hoping for their swift return. "You'll regret this," I whispered, more to myself than to them. You can't just terrorize people. Oh, but we can, the second woman said, her voice a soothing purr that only made the dread clawing at my insides intensify. It's what we do best. You see, we thrive on fear, on the little flickers of panic that dance in your eyes. The night felt thicker, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. I turned to run, but before I could take a step, the first woman caught my wrist, her grip like iron. Now, where do you think you're going? I struggled against her hold, my heart pounding as I felt the rush of adrenaline. Let me go, I shouted, desperate for release. Why don't you stay and have a little fun with us, she said, her smile widening as she pulled me closer. We have so many games to play. The second woman moved to flank me, her presence a looming threat that made my skin crawl. You have to understand, sweetheart, she said, her tone dripping with condescension. The more you resist, the more enjoyable it becomes for us. Suddenly, the door to the convenience store burst open, and the officers emerged, confusion etched on their faces. What's going on? One of them barked, eyes darting between the women and me. Help me! I screamed, panic rising in my throat. They're trying to hurt me. The officers moved forward, their instincts kicking in as they took in the scene. Step away from her, one of them ordered, his voice firm and authoritative. The women exchanged glances, their laughter dancing in the air like an ominous melody. You think you can protect her? The darker-haired woman taunted, her eyes gleaming with amusement. You're too late. Before anyone could react, the atmosphere shifted, the air crackling with tension. I felt the world around me distort, shadows stretching and twisting as if alive, threatening to swallow us whole. Get back, one of the officers shouted, raising his hand to shield himself. This isn't a game. But the women only laughed, a sound that resonated with a chilling echo. Oh, darling, it's the best game of all, the second woman replied, her voice silky smooth. And you're all invited. Suddenly, the first woman released her grip on me, stepping back as the lights flickered violently, plunging the street into an unsettling darkness. I could hear the distant hum of the city, but it felt muffled, as if a barrier had descended between us and the outside world. Run, sweetheart, the darker-haired woman said, her voice a whisper laced with malice. Run while you still can. With that, the world erupted into chaos. The officers moved to apprehend them, but the women slipped away like shadows, weaving through the flickering lights. My heart raced as I turned to follow, but the darkness pressed in, blurring my vision and warping reality. Stay together. I heard one of the officers shout, but it felt futile as the chaos swirled around us. I darted toward the street, my instincts screaming at me to escape, but the shadows seemed to cling to my heels, urging me to stay. I could hear the officers shouting, the sounds of struggle echoing behind me, but I couldn't stop. I had to get away, to find safety beyond the reach of their twisted game. As I turned a corner, I felt a sudden rush of air, the world around me growing quiet. I stumbled into an alley, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The darkness wrapped around me, but for a moment it felt like a shield, a barrier between me and the chaos I had just escaped. I pressed my back against the cool brick wall, trying to catch my breath, but my mind raced with terror. What had just happened? The women were like phantoms, slipping in and out of reality, and I could feel their eyes on me, even in their absence. I glanced back toward the street, straining to hear the sounds of pursuit, but all I could hear was the distant thrum of the city. I felt like I was teetering on the edge of sanity, caught between the real and the unreal. The memories of the cafe flooded my mind, those smiles, the laughter, the overwhelming sense of dread. I had thought escaping them would bring relief, but now, All I felt was the weight of their lingering presence, the knowledge that they were still out there, hunting me like a predator stalks its prey. What did they want from me? I could feel the questions gnawing at my mind, but I pushed them away. I had to focus on escaping, on finding safety beyond their reach. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye at the end of the alley, and I froze, my heart racing. The shadows shifted, and for a moment, I thought I saw one of them emerging from the darkness. "Where are you hiding, darling?" came a voice, sweet and taunting, echoing down the alley. I turned to run, my instincts kicking in as I darted deeper into the shadows. The world around me blurred, the sounds of the city fading as I stumbled through the darkened streets, desperately seeking refuge from the nightmare that seemed to chase me down. I ran blindly, the concrete beneath my feet rough and unforgiving. Each step echoed in my mind, a reminder of the terror I was fleeing. My lungs burned, but I pushed myself to go faster, driven by the primal need to escape the suffocating darkness that pursued me. The alleyways twisted and turned, leading me deeper into the labyrinth of the city. Shadows danced along the walls, morphing into grotesque shapes that haunted my every glance. I could still hear their laughter in my mind, a chilling melody that followed me like a ghost. I stumbled onto a quieter street, the glow of streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. My breath came in ragged gasps, and I forced myself to look around. Where was I? The familiar landmarks that had guided me through the city felt distant and foreign now. I spotted a small diner across the street, its neon sign flickering weakly. The familiar warmth of light promised refuge, and I felt a surge of hope. If I could just reach it, maybe I could find help, or at the very least, some semblance of safety. I dashed across the road, glancing over my shoulder to see if the women were still pursuing me. The street was empty, but the feeling of being watched clung to me like a second skin. I pushed through the diner door, the bell above ringing cheerfully, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling inside me. The interior was warm and inviting, the smell of coffee and frying food wrapping around me like a comforting blanket. A few patrons occupied the booths, their conversations a low hum that filled the air. But my heart raced, and the cozy atmosphere felt hollow as I approached the counter. "Can I help you?" the waitress asked, her voice gentle, but I could see the flicker of concern in her eyes as she took in my disheveled appearance. "I need help," I gasped, gripping the edge of the counter for support. "There are these women. They're after me." She frowned, glancing around the diner as if expecting to see the danger I described. "What do you mean? Are you in trouble?" "I don't know," I said, my voice trembling. "They were at the cafe. They can make you feel things, terrifying things. I think they want to hurt me." The waitress exchanged glances with the cook in the back, her expression shifting from concern to something resembling disbelief. "Look, maybe you should sit down and—" "No. You don't understand," I interrupted, panic bubbling over. "You have to believe me. They're not normal." Just then, the door swung open, and a gust of wind rushed through the diner, carrying with it a chill that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I turned to see a couple of people enter, but my breath caught in my throat when I recognized one of the women from the cafe. She glided in, her movements almost ethereal, the dark-haired one with the unsettling smile. The other woman was just behind her, both of them scanning the room with predatory interest. "There you are," the first woman called out, her voice lilting like a song. "We've been looking for you." The diner fell silent, all eyes turning to me. I felt the weight of their gazes, the palpable tension in the air, and my heart raced as I tried to comprehend the reality of the moment. "Stay away from me," I shouted, backing away from the counter as the waitress looked between us, confusion etched on her face. The woman stepped forward, unfazed by my outburst. "Oh, sweetheart, you don't need to be scared. We just want to have some fun." "Fun?" I spat, my voice rising in desperation. "You think this is fun? You're insane." The other woman laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine. "Insanity is a matter of perspective. You'll understand soon enough. Somebody call the police." I yelled, but the fear in the diner seemed to hold everyone hostage. The waitress hesitated, glancing nervously at the women before looking back at me. The dark-haired woman reached out, her fingers brushing the air between us, and suddenly the lights flickered again, plunging the diner into semi-darkness. The laughter rose around me, echoing in the depths of my mind, drowning out everything else. "No!" I screamed, instinctively turning to run, but the waitress stepped forward, concern etched on her face. "Wait. You can't just..." But it was too late. I dashed toward the exit, the world around me blurring as I pushed through the door, the bell jingling madly behind me. I sprinted back into the street, the cool night air hitting me like a wave of clarity. I had to get away from them. I couldn't let them trap me again. The street was eerily quiet, and I could feel the shadows closing in, creeping along the pavement like tendrils reaching for me. I glanced back, half expecting to see the women emerging from the diner, their smiles unbroken. But the diner remained silent, the neon lights casting a sickly glow over the street. Had I imagined it? I turned to run again, my instincts screaming at me to escape, but a sense of dread rooted me to the spot. I needed to find somewhere safe, somewhere the darkness couldn't reach. Just ahead, I spotted a small park with dimly lit paths winding through it. The thought of hiding among the trees felt better than remaining out in the open, exposed. I darted toward it, my heart pounding as I pushed through the gate, the rusty hinges creaking in protest. The trees loomed above me, their branches casting long shadows that danced in the flickering light. I felt the cool breeze brush against my skin, a momentary reprieve from the fear that threatened to consume me. I took a deep breath, straining to listen for any sign of pursuit, but the park was quiet. I moved deeper into the shadows, seeking solace among the trees. The world outside felt distant, a vague memory as I pressed my back against the rough bark, closing my eyes for a moment to gather my thoughts. What was happening? Why were those women so intent on tormenting me? I had thought I could escape them, but here I was, running in circles, trapped in a nightmare that seemed to have no end. As I stood there, trembling and uncertain, I heard a rustling in the bushes nearby. My heart leaped into my throat as I squinted into the darkness, straining to see. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. Silence. Then, a low chuckle that sent a chill down my spine. "Oh, darling, don't you know? You're never alone." I whirled around, scanning the shadows, but there was nothing there. Just the dark trees, the whispering wind, and the feeling of being watched. The laughter echoed in my mind, and suddenly, I was reminded of the cafe, of the way those women had looked at me, the way they had played with my fear as if it were a game. I needed to think, to find a way to break free from their twisted grasp. But as I stood in the park, shadows closing in around me, I realized with growing dread that they might already have me trapped. I pressed my back against the rough bark of the tree, my breath hitching as I tried to calm the rising tide of panic within me. The rustling sound faded, but the feeling of being watched intensified, prickling my skin like tiny needles. "Get a grip," I muttered to myself, willing my heart to slow down. I needed to think clearly, to find a way out of this madness. I could feel the darkness tightening around me, its whispers becoming clearer as if the very shadows were alive. The laughter from the cafe echoed in my mind, blending with the low chuckle I had just heard. It was a sinister melody that twisted around my thoughts, making it hard to distinguish reality from the dread creeping in. I had to get away from this place. I glanced around the park, searching for an exit. The trees stood like sentinels, their branches swaying gently in the breeze, but the paths ahead were shrouded in darkness. I could feel the weight of the night pressing down on me, heavy and suffocating. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye at the far end of the park. My heart raced as I squinted into the shadows, fear gripping me tightly. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling despite my attempt to sound steady. The silence that followed felt oppressive, wrapping around me like a vice. I strained to listen, but all I could hear was the rustling of leaves and the distant hum of the city, a reminder of the world I had temporarily left behind. Then, from the darkness, a figure emerged. It was tall and cloaked in shadow, features obscured by the dim light. My heart pounded violently against my chest as I took a cautious step back, unsure if this was friend or foe. "Please," I said, desperation creeping into my voice. "I just want to be left alone." The figure stepped closer, and I could see a glint of recognition in their eyes. "You shouldn't be out here alone," they said, their voice low and gravelly. "Not with them around." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "You know them?" The figure nodded, shifting slightly into the light. It was a man, disheveled and weary, with a haunted look in his eyes that sent a jolt of fear through me. "I've seen them before. They don't play fair." "Who are they?" I asked, a mix of curiosity and fear bubbling up. "What do they want?" "They're not from here," he said, glancing around as if afraid of being overheard. "They thrive on fear and chaos. It's like a game to them, and you're their latest target." I swallowed hard, the implications of his words sinking in. "What can I do?" "Get out while you still can," he replied, urgency threading his tone. "The more you linger, the more they'll take from you. They feed on fear like vultures on carrion." I hesitated, fear and instinct warring within me. "But I can't just leave. What if they come after me? I can't let them." "Listen," he interrupted, his eyes boring into mine. "You have to find a way to fight back. Don't let them see your fear. That's what they want. If you show them you're not afraid, you can break their hold." A flicker of hope ignited in my chest, but it was quickly extinguished by the shadow of doubt. How can I not be afraid? There. Before I could finish my thought, a soft rustling interrupted us, and the atmosphere shifted. I could feel it, the unmistakable presence of something dark and sinister. My heart raced as I turned to see the two women stepping out from the shadows, their smiles stretching wider, their eyes gleaming with delight. "There you are," the darker-haired woman called, her voice sing-songy, dripping with malice. "We've been looking for you, darling. Did you really think you could hide?" The man beside me stiffened, his expression darkening. "Run," he urged, but it was too late. The women advanced, their movements graceful and fluid, closing the distance between us in an instant. "You shouldn't have come back here," the second woman taunted, her voice a velvety whisper. "Now you'll have to play with us." Panic surged through me, and I turned to flee, but the darkness seemed to thicken, wrapping around my legs like a vine. I glanced back to see the man still standing, frozen in place, as if entranced by their presence. "Come join us," the first woman said, her voice a hypnotic lure. It'll be so much fun. Don't, I screamed, reaching for the man, desperate to pull him away from their influence. But as I extended my hand, the shadows around him deepened, swallowing him whole. No! I shouted, panic clawing at my throat as I turned to run. I couldn't stay here. I had to escape. I darted down the path, the laughter of the women echoing behind me, filling the air with a chilling melody that wrapped around my mind. Each step felt heavier than the last, the darkness pressing in on me, squeezing the breath from my lungs. I could feel them closing in, the shadows lurking just beyond my vision, and I knew I had to find a way to break free. As I reached the edge of the park, I stumbled into the street, gasping for air. The city lights twinkled in the distance, a beacon of safety, but doubt gnawed at me. Would I ever truly escape them? I glanced back one last time, half expecting to see them emerge from the shadows. But the park remained still, the darkness swallowing the trees in a suffocating embrace. With renewed determination, I turned and ran, racing toward the safety of the lights, my heart pounding with each desperate beat. The city was alive around me, but I felt isolated, ensnared in a web of fear and uncertainty. I had to find a place to regroup, to gather my thoughts and plan my next move. I couldn't let them win. I wouldn't be their victim. I sprinted through the streets, the vibrant city around me blurring into a haze of lights and sounds. The laughter still echoed in my ears, a haunting reminder of the danger lurking just behind me. I needed to find a safe haven, somewhere I could gather my thoughts and regroup. As I ran, I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, urging me to keep moving. I dodged through alleyways and crossed streets, the rhythmic pulse of the city drowning out the whispers of fear that threatened to consume me. Finally, I spotted a 24-hour convenience store up ahead, its fluorescent lights spilling into the night like a welcoming embrace. Relief washed over me, and I pushed through the door, the familiar jingle of the bells sounding like a lifeline. Inside, the store was bright and bustling, a stark contrast to the darkness outside. A few late-night shoppers milled about, their faces illuminated by the cold glow of the overhead lights. I approached the counter, my heart still racing as I tried to catch my breath. The cashier looked up, his expression shifting from boredom to concern as he took in my disheveled appearance. "You all right, miss?" "Just need to catch my breath," I replied, forcing a smile that felt foreign on my lips. "It's been a long night." He nodded, eyeing me warily but returning to his task. I glanced around the store, the rows of snacks and drinks offering a brief respite from the chaos outside. But even here, I felt the weight of the shadows pressing in, a reminder that I was still very much in danger. I moved to the back of the store, hoping to find a quiet corner to collect my thoughts. I needed to figure out my next steps, to devise a plan that would keep me safe from those women and whatever dark forces they wielded. As I stood there, I pulled out my phone, my hands trembling as I tried to steady my breathing. My heart sank as I realized I had no service. Of course, the universe would conspire against me. I felt so utterly alone, trapped in a world where reality and fear blurred into one. Suddenly, the bell above the door jingled again, pulling my attention. I turned to see a group of people enter, their laughter ringing out like an ominous bell. I froze as I recognized one of them, the dark-haired woman, her smile cutting through the air like a knife. "No," I whispered, panic surging through me once more. I ducked behind a shelf, my heart racing as I strained to hear what they were saying. "Did you see her?" she asked, her voice laced with a honeyed tone that sent shivers down my spine. "She thinks she can hide from us." "Let's just play with her a bit," the second woman chimed in, her laughter a chilling echo. "It's always more fun when they're scared." My stomach churned as their words wrapped around me like a noose. I couldn't stay here. I had to escape again. I took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage I had left. I carefully made my way to the back exit, praying they wouldn't see me. The door was just a few feet away, a sliver of hope in this nightmare. With every step, I could hear their laughter growing louder, echoing through the store as if the very walls were alive. I felt the shadows creeping closer, ready to ensnare me once more. I reached the door and pulled it open slowly, wincing at the creak of the hinges. I stepped outside, my heart pounding as I glanced back. They were still inside, oblivious for now. I darted into the night, the cold air hitting my face like a splash of ice water. I didn't stop running until I reached a nearby bus stop, the shelter providing a momentary sense of safety. I leaned against the cold metal bench, trying to gather my thoughts. I needed to think, to plan my next move. But the fear still gripped me, and I could feel the shadows closing in again. As I stood there, the lights of the city flickering around me, I realized I needed to confront this head-on. I couldn't let them continue to manipulate me, to haunt my every waking moment. What if I turned the tables? What if I used their own tactics against them? I took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill my lungs. I could do this. I had to be brave. I would confront them, but on my terms. The bus pulled up, its headlights cutting through the darkness, and I knew I had to make a choice. I could either run and hide or stand my ground. I chose the latter. I stepped onto the bus, my heart racing as I took a seat near the back. The driver glanced back at me, but I averted my gaze, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on me. I was tired, emotionally and physically drained, but I couldn't afford to let my guard down. As the bus pulled away from the stop, I glanced out the window, watching the city lights flicker past like stars in the dark sky. The women could be anywhere, lurking in the shadows, but I wouldn't let fear dictate my actions anymore. I pulled out my phone again, hoping for a miracle. This time, I had service. With shaking hands, I opened my contacts and scrolled until I found a familiar name, my best friend, Mia. I hit call, my heart pounding as the phone rang. Please pick up. I needed her more than ever. Hello? Her voice came through, a soothing balm against my fraying nerves. Mia, it's me, I said, the relief flooding through me. I need your help. Are you okay? Where are you? I'm on bus, but there are these women, they won't leave me alone. I don't know what they want, but I'm scared. Where are you going? I'll come get you. I took a deep breath, glancing at the passing streets. I'm not sure. Just meet me at the cafe. Okay, I'm on my way. Stay safe, she replied, her voice filled with concern. I hung up, feeling a glimmer of hope surge within me. Mia would help me face them, and together, we could find a way to confront the darkness. The bus wound its way through the city, the familiar sights grounding me as I prepared for the inevitable confrontation. I had to face them, to stand my ground. I wouldn't let them take away my peace any longer. As the bus pulled up to the cafe, I felt a sense of determination settle within me. This was it. I would not be a victim. I would fight back. As the bus came to a halt outside the cafe, I felt a mixture of dread and resolve wash over me. The warm glow of the lights spilled out into the night, a beacon that drew me in despite the darkness swirling around. I stepped off the bus, my heart pounding, and quickly scanned the area for Mia. There she was, standing just outside the entrance, her expression a mix of concern and determination. I hurried over, wrapping my arms around her in a tight embrace. "I'm so glad you're here," I whispered, my voice shaky. "Are you all right?" she asked, pulling back to examine my face. "You look pale. What happened?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "It's a long story, but there are these women. They've been following me, and I think they want something." Her brow furrowed in concern, but she nodded resolutely. "We'll figure this out together. Just stick close to me." As we entered the cafe, I could feel the familiar atmosphere wrapping around me like a comforting blanket. The sound of chatter and clinking cups was reassuring, but the memory of the women's laughter lingered in the back of my mind, a shadow lurking just out of sight. We found a corner booth and settled in, the cafe's warmth contrasting sharply with the chill that had settled in my bones. I glanced around, half expecting to see the dark-haired woman lurking among the patrons, but the cafe seemed blissfully unaware of the threat that loomed just outside. "I can't shake this feeling," I admitted, my hands trembling as I wrapped them around a steaming cup of coffee that Mia had ordered for me. "It's like they're always watching, waiting for the right moment to strike." Mia leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Then let's take the fight to them. We'll come up with a plan. Do you know where they might be?" I shook my head, frustration clawing at me. "They could be anywhere. They blend in so well. It's like they're part of the shadows." Just then, the door swung open and a cold breeze swept through the cafe, causing a shiver to run down my spine. I turned instinctively to look, my heart racing as I spotted the dark-haired woman stepping inside, a predatory smile plastered on her face. "Mia," I hissed, panic rising. "They're here." Mia's gaze followed mine, her expression shifting to one of steely resolve. "Stay calm. We can't show them fear. Just act normal." The woman sauntered toward us, her friend trailing behind, their eyes glinting with amusement. "Look who we found," the second woman said, her voice dripping with mockery. "You really thought you could escape us?" I clenched my fists, a surge of anger igniting within me. "What do you want from me?" The dark-haired woman leaned in closer, her breath cold against my skin. "We just want to play a little game," she said, her smile widening. "You're so much fun to watch." "Leave me alone," I shot back, feeling a wave of defiance swell within me. Mia placed a hand on my arm, grounding me. "You don't scare us," she said, her voice firm. "We're not going to let you control our night." The women exchanged glances, a flicker of surprise crossing their faces before the dark-haired woman laughed. "How cute. You think you can resist? You have no idea what you're dealing with." "Try us," I replied, my voice stronger than I felt. For a moment, a tense silence hung in the air, the cafe around us oblivious to the confrontation unfolding. Then the second woman stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "You really think you can play with fire and not get burned?" With that, she flicked her wrist, and the lights in the cafe flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Gasps erupted from the other patrons, and I could feel the energy in the room shift, a palpable tension filling the space. "What are you doing?" I demanded, fear creeping back in as I glanced around. The other customers looked frightened, some retreating to the corners, eyes wide with confusion. "Just reminding you of who's in control," the dark-haired woman said, her voice smooth as silk, laced with an undercurrent of malice. "You can't escape us." Mia squeezed my hand, her grip a steady anchor amid the chaos. "We won't let you intimidate us," she said, her voice unwavering. "We're not afraid of you." The laughter of the women echoed, sending chills down my spine. "Oh, sweetie, you have no idea what fear really is," the second woman sneered. I glanced at Mia, my heart racing. "We have to do something. We can't let them win." Mia nodded, determination etched on her face. "Let's show them we're not afraid. We need to turn the tables." The dark-haired woman tilted her head, amusement dancing in her eyes. "And how do you plan to do that? By playing hero? You're just delaying the inevitable." "Maybe," I said, summoning every ounce of courage. "But I refuse to let you dictate my life." With that, I stood up, the adrenaline surging through my veins. "This ends tonight." The cafe went silent as everyone turned to look at us, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I could feel the stares, the uncertainty hanging in the air. The women exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from amusement to annoyance. "You think you can challenge us?" the dark-haired woman hissed, stepping closer. "Watch me," I replied, my voice steady. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and I felt the temperature drop, the shadows deepening around us. The cafe's atmosphere shifted, darkening as if the very essence of fear had seeped in. But this time, I wouldn't back down. I stepped forward, my gaze unwavering. "You want to play games? Fine. Let's play." The dark-haired woman laughed, but it lacked the confidence it had held moments before. "You really think you can stand against us?" I felt a spark of hope igniting within me, fueled by Mia's unwavering support. "Yes, I do. And I won't let you take away my freedom." With a sudden burst of energy, I reached out, focusing all my willpower. "I won't let fear control me." A wave of light surged around us, momentarily illuminating the cafe in a warm glow that pushed back the shadows. The laughter faltered, and for a moment, the darkness recoiled, hesitant. "Stop!" the dark-haired woman shouted, her voice rising in anger. The other patrons looked on, their fear mingling with confusion. But in that moment, I felt powerful. I was no longer a victim. As the light enveloped me, I could see the expressions on the women's faces shift from amusement to frustration, their predatory smiles faltering. "Do you really think you can fight us?" the dark-haired woman spat, her demeanor shifting as the light pushed against her darkness. "Yes," I affirmed, my voice firm. "And I will." With that declaration, I felt the energy around me shift, a surge of warmth filling the cafe as I stood my ground. The shadows began to recede, the laughter fading into whispers of confusion. I had taken the first step, and with Mia by my side, I was ready to face whatever came next. The warm light enveloping me felt like a shield, a protective barrier against the darkness that had threatened to consume me. I stood firm, my heart racing with adrenaline as the dark-haired woman's expression shifted from confidence to frustration. "You think this is a game?" she spat, her voice low and dangerous. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Mia stood beside me, her eyes unwavering, and I could feel her strength radiating in tandem with my own. "We know enough," she said defiantly. "We're not going to let you intimidate us anymore." The cafe was silent, the atmosphere thick with tension as patrons watched the unfolding drama. I could feel their eyes on us, their uncertainty palpable, but I refused to let that sway me. The dark-haired woman's smile was cold, devoid of any warmth. "You think you can just cast away the shadows? They're part of you now. You can't escape them." I swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling in. But this was my moment. "Maybe I can't escape them," I replied, my voice steady. "But I won't let them control me." The second woman stepped forward, her gaze piercing. You're playing with forces beyond your comprehension. You think you can resist us? We'll show you what true fear is. A chill ran down my spine, but I refused to back down. No. You'll show me nothing. In a sudden movement, the dark-haired woman raised her hands, the lights flickering ominously once more. You really want to test us? The cafe lights dimmed, the comforting warmth replaced by a frigid atmosphere. I could feel the energy in the room shift, the shadows stretching out like claws, trying to grasp at my resolve. But I would not yield. I'm not afraid of you, I shouted, my voice rising above the oppressive silence. Then let's see how long that lasts, the dark-haired woman retorted, her voice laced with malice. Suddenly, the shadows coalesced around her, swirling like a storm, and I felt a rush of cold air blast through the cafe. Patrons gasped, some taking a step back, their faces a mix of confusion and fear. Everyone, get back, I urged, raising my hands defensively as the air crackled with tension. Mia moved closer, her eyes locked on the women. We need to stand together. They thrive on fear and division. Yes, I agreed, determination flooding my veins. We won't let them divide us. With renewed strength, I concentrated on the warmth surrounding me, focusing on the light that had surged earlier. I could feel its energy pulsing within, a beacon of hope pushing back against the encroaching darkness. Together, I shouted, urging everyone in the cafe to rally with us. We're stronger together. The patrons hesitated, uncertainty lingering in the air, but then a few brave souls began to move closer, joining Mia and me in solidarity. The dark-haired woman's eyes widened in disbelief. You think this is enough? You think mere numbers can protect you? Yes, I yelled, my heart pounding in my chest. Our unity is our strength. As more patrons gathered around us, a collective energy began to build, the air growing warmer as we stood firm against the darkness. Do you feel that? I asked, glancing at Mia. We're creating a barrier. Keep it up, she urged, her voice filled with encouragement. We have to channel this energy. The shadows around the dark-haired woman recoiled slightly, as if stung by the light emanating from our collective resolve. You think this changes anything? She hissed, but there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice. No, it changes everything, I replied, my voice steady and resolute. We're done playing your games. With every heartbeat, the warmth intensified, and I could feel the light growing stronger, pushing back against the darkness. The cafe was no longer just a battleground, it had transformed into a sanctuary of hope. The second woman glared at us, her frustration evident. You can't keep this up forever. Eventually, the darkness will return. Maybe, I conceded, but we'll be ready for it. And we'll face it together. The dark-haired woman took a step back, her confidence wavering. You think you can defy the inevitable? Yes, I shouted, my voice resonating with conviction. We will not be afraid. We choose light over darkness. The air crackled with energy, and as I reached out, the warmth surged around me, amplifying our resolve. The shadows twisted and writhed, struggling against the light that was pushing them back. Then, the first crack appeared in the darkness, a brilliant flash of light that shattered the oppressive gloom, illuminating the cafe with a radiant glow. Gasps erupted from the patrons, and the dark-haired woman staggered back, her expression shifting from anger to fear. What is happening? She cried, her voice tinged with panic. Stand firm, I urged, feeling the energy building within us. Don't let up. We're stronger than they are. The shadows began to recede, the cold air dissipating as warmth enveloped us. The cafe transformed into a realm of light, banishing the darkness that had threatened to consume us. With one final push, I reached out, feeling the energy radiate from our gathering. "We choose hope," I declared. And in that moment, the darkness shattered, the shadows retreating like a tide pulled back from the shore. The cafe erupted into light, and the dark-haired woman let out a piercing scream, the sound reverberating through the air. Then, silence. The cafe was bright, the oppressive atmosphere replaced with warmth and laughter. I looked around, the patrons' faces illuminated by relief and disbelief. We had done it. We had pushed back the darkness. As I turned to Mia, a sense of triumph surged within me. "We won," I breathed, a smile breaking across my face. "Yeah, we did," she replied, her eyes sparkling with pride. But as the reality of the situation settled in, I felt a flicker of unease. The darkness may have retreated for now, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it would return. And next time, I needed to be ready. The brightness in the cafe felt like a dream, a moment of triumph snatched from the jaws of despair. Laughter and chatter filled the air as patrons began to exchange bewildered glances, their expressions a mix of relief and confusion. The dark-haired woman and her companion had vanished, leaving behind a lingering chill that still clung to the corners of the room. "Did that just happen?" Mia asked, her voice trembling slightly as she took in the scene around us. "I think so," I replied, still processing the whirlwind of emotions that had swept through us just moments before. "But it felt too easy." Mia nodded, concern etching lines on her forehead. "We can't let our guard down. They could come back, and we have to be prepared." "Right," I agreed, taking a deep breath to steady myself. "But how?" "They know where we are." As if sensing my growing unease, a server approached our table, a look of disbelief still on her face. "Are you two all right?" That was something. "We're fine," I assured her, forcing a smile. "Just a bit shaken up." The server nodded, still glancing around the cafe as if trying to comprehend what had just happened. "If you need anything, just let me know. You're not alone here." With a grateful nod, I watched her walk away, my heart heavy with the reality that we had to figure out our next steps. "Okay," I said, turning back to Mia. "Let's come up with a plan. We can't let them have the upper hand again." Mia leaned in closer, her eyes shining with determination. "First, we need to find out who they are and what they want. Maybe we can get some information from the regulars here." I glanced around the cafe, spotting a few familiar faces, people who seemed like they had made this place their second home. "That's a good idea. Maybe someone has seen them before." We decided to approach an older gentleman sitting alone in the corner, a book resting on the table beside him. He looked up as we approached, his eyes curious but kind. "Excuse me, sir," I began, my heart racing slightly. "We were wondering if you've seen a couple of women here before. Dark hair, kind of intimidating?" The man's expression shifted to one of concern, and he nodded slowly. "Yes, I've seen them around. They come in from time to time. Not often, but they've always made an impression. What do you know about them?" Mia pressed, her voice steady but urgent. He leaned back in his chair, glancing around the cafe as if ensuring no one was listening too closely. "They have a reputation. Some say they're involved in unusual things. Unnatural." My heart sank. "What kind of unusual things?" "They say they can manipulate the shadows, control fear. Some folks believe they're just myths, but he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I've seen things I can't explain. Strange happenings when they're around. Mia and I exchanged a glance, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. Is there a way to stop them? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. He shook his head slowly. That's the thing. They feed off fear and isolation. The more you're afraid, the stronger they become. But unity can weaken them. Unity, I murmured, remembering the warmth we had felt just moments ago. We need to rally everyone here. The man nodded, his gaze intense. If you can gather enough people, maybe you can drive them away for good. But you'll need to act fast. Thank you, Mia said, her voice firm. We appreciate your help. As we walked away from the man's table, I felt a surge of purpose. We can do this, Mia. We just have to spread the word. Let's start with the people closest to us, she suggested, gesturing toward a group of friends sitting nearby. We'll tell them what we know and see if they're willing to help. As we approached the group, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. But the flicker of hope ignited by the idea of unity propelled me forward. Hey, can we talk to you for a minute? Mia called out, her voice carrying across the table. The friends turned their attention to us, expressions shifting from casual interest to concern as we explained the situation. You're serious? One of them asked, disbelief etched on her features. Dead serious, I replied, my heart pounding. They're dangerous, and we need to come together to protect ourselves. After a brief discussion, the group agreed to help us spread the word. The cafe soon transformed into a hub of activity as people began to gather, whispering amongst themselves, sharing stories of the strange occurrences that had followed the women. As the cafe filled with a growing sense of camaraderie, I felt a spark of hope reigniting within me. This is it, I whispered to Mia, my heart racing. We're making a stand. But deep down, an unsettling thought lingered. What if this wasn't enough? What if the darkness returned stronger than before? And just as that thought crossed my mind, the cafe doors swung open and the atmosphere shifted. The dark-haired woman stepped inside, a smirk curling at her lips. Well, she purred, her voice dripping with mockery. Looks like you've gathered quite the little party. But do you really think you can protect yourselves from me? My heart sank as she scanned the room, her gaze lingering on the faces of the patrons who had rallied around us. Do you really believe unity can save you? She taunted, her laughter echoing through the cafe, sending shivers down my spine. We'll see about that, I called back, my voice trembling but resolute. Enough of this nonsense, she shot back, her smile fading. You've only delayed the inevitable. I could feel the energy in the room shift, the atmosphere growing heavy with tension as the patrons looked between me and the dark-haired woman. Stand together, I shouted, my voice rising above the whispers of fear. We can do this. We are stronger together. But doubt crept in, a nagging feeling that perhaps the darkness was far more powerful than we could comprehend. As the dark-haired woman stepped forward, shadows flickering at her heels, I knew we were in for the fight of our lives. The dark-haired woman stepped further into the cafe, her confidence radiating like a sinister aura. Shadows danced around her feet, creeping forward as if drawn to her presence. I could see the uncertainty flicker in the eyes of my newfound allies, and my heart raced. Stay strong, I called out, willing my voice to remain steady. We've faced her before, and we can do it again. Foolish bravado, the woman sneered, her lips curling into a mocking smile. You think your little group can stand against the darkness? You don't know what you're up against. Maybe we don't know everything, Mia shouted back, stepping forward beside me. But we're not going to let you intimidate us. The atmosphere in the cafe shifted, a palpable tension hanging in the air. The other patrons, though frightened, began to rally, standing a little taller as they whispered words of encouragement to one another. You've brought your little friends to the party, the dark-haired woman continued, her tone dripping with sarcasm. How adorable. But do you really think this will save you? Unity will always outshine darkness, I said, my heart pounding as I stepped closer, trying to project confidence. We won't be afraid of you anymore. She let out a chilling laugh that echoed through the room, sending a shiver down my spine. Fear is in your nature. I'll just have to show you how deep it runs. In that moment, the air around us thickened, and the lights flickered ominously once more. The shadows swirled like a storm, and I felt a sudden wave of panic wash over me. Focus! I shouted, trying to center myself. Remember what we felt earlier. We need to connect with each other. The patrons, though scared, began to move closer together, forming a protective circle. I could feel the warmth building among us, a flickering light against the encroaching darkness. Now! Mia shouted, raising her hands as if to channel the energy. Let's push back. With all our might, we focused on the light inside, letting it surge outward. The cafe glowed, illuminating our faces as we stood firm against the shadows. The dark-haired woman's expression twisted from amusement to anger. You really think you can overpower me? She spat, the shadows around her recoiling as our combined strength surged forth. Yes, I shouted, feeling the light intensify. We choose hope. We choose to stand together. The warmth grew, flooding the cafe, and I could see the fear in the woman's eyes. She took a step back, her composure cracking as the shadows began to dissipate under the onslaught of our collective energy. Enough, she shrieked, raising her arms, and the darkness surged around her like a tidal wave. I felt the wind whip through the cafe, and for a moment it felt as though the very foundations of our unity were shaking. The shadows reached for us, clawing at the edges of our light. Hold on! Mia shouted, her voice piercing through the chaos. We can't let them win. As the shadows lashed out, I closed my eyes for a brief moment, drawing on the strength of those around me. The warmth pulsed within, and I felt a wave of determination sweep through us. Together! I yelled, raising my arms as the light burst forth, pushing back against the shadows with renewed vigor. The cafe erupted into brilliance, the shadows retreating further with every heartbeat. The dark-haired woman faltered, a look of disbelief etched on her face. No, she screamed, rage boiling in her voice. This isn't over. With one final push, the light surged, and the shadows shattered, leaving nothing but a faint whisper in the air. The woman staggered back, her eyes wide with fury and disbelief before she vanished into the depths of the darkness, leaving behind only an echo of her laughter that faded into silence. As the light enveloped the cafe, cheers erupted around us. Patrons embraced one another, their faces flushed with relief and triumph. We did it! I exclaimed, breathless with exhilaration. Mia turned to me, a wide smile breaking across her face. We really did. I can't believe it. But as I looked around at the joyful faces, a sense of unease settled deep within me. But will they come back? I asked, my voice tinged with concern. Mia's expression sobered. They might. But we showed them that we can stand together. That's powerful. The cafe buzzed with excitement, yet a part of me felt unsettled. The darkness had retreated, but it had not been vanquished. I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows would return, perhaps even stronger. We spent the next hour talking with the patrons, sharing stories and basking in the aftermath of our victory. But even amid the laughter, I could feel a flicker of anxiety growing inside me. The cafe was alive with chatter, the bonds forged in the heat of battle stronger than I had ever imagined. But as I glanced toward the door, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned, and my heart dropped. The dark-haired woman stood just outside the threshold, a faint smile on her lips as she watched us celebrate. "Until next time," she mouthed, before disappearing into the night, her figure swallowed by the darkness. Panic surged through me, and I felt the joyous atmosphere shatter like glass. "She's still out there," I shouted, my voice cutting through the laughter. "She'll come back." Murmurs of concern rippled through the crowd, and I could see fear creeping back into their eyes. "Everyone, stay close," Mia urged, stepping forward to rally the group. "We can't let fear divide us." But as I looked around at the worried faces, the nagging sense of dread tightened its grip on my heart. This wasn't over. The shadows would return, and next time, we might not be so lucky. The atmosphere in the cafe shifted drastically as the reality of our situation settled in. The once celebratory air now crackled with tension, a lingering fear shadowing our victory. I could see it reflected in the faces around me. The exhilaration of the moment was quickly fading, replaced by uncertainty and worry. "Everyone, let's stay focused," I urged, my heart racing. "We need to keep watch. She's not going to just let this go." Mia nodded, her expression serious as she scanned the cafe. "Let's set up a system. We need to know if anyone sees her or if anything feels off." The patrons began to regroup, forming small clusters to discuss strategies. I felt a flicker of hope that we could maintain our unity, but it was quickly overshadowed by the chilling reminder of what we had just faced. As the evening progressed, the once warm cafe transformed into a battleground of nerves. We took turns keeping watch, whispering among ourselves as the shadows outside lengthened, stretching like fingers seeking to reclaim what they had lost. "Maybe we should think about leaving," one of the patrons suggested hesitantly, glancing at the windows as if expecting to see the dark-haired woman lurking just beyond the glass. "No," I responded, perhaps too forcefully. "We can't let fear dictate our actions. If we leave, it shows her that she has power over us." "But what if she's waiting for us to leave?" Mia interjected, her brow furrowed in thought. "We have to consider every possibility. We can't just sit here in fear," I insisted, fighting to maintain my composure. "We have to keep our spirits up. We have to trust each other." The conversation ebbed and flowed, tension crackling like static in the air. As I listened to the various opinions, I felt a weight pressing down on my chest, a fear that had been simmering just beneath the surface. The cafe's walls seemed to close in, and the once familiar surroundings felt alien and threatening. My mind raced with possibilities, each darker than the last. What if the dark-haired woman returned with even greater strength? What if she had allies? As if sensing my spiraling thoughts, Mia placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "We'll get through this together. Remember, we're not alone anymore." Her words should have comforted me, but they only deepened my anxiety. I glanced toward the door again, half expecting the woman to reappear. The hours dragged on, and the cafe's patrons began to grow weary. We took turns telling stories, trying to distract ourselves from the impending darkness. But with every laugh that filled the air, I could feel the shadows lurking just beyond our light. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the tension. A glass shattered on the floor, and everyone turned toward the sound. A group of late-night patrons had entered, their laughter ringing out sharply against the silence. "Sorry about that," one of them called, waving apologetically. "Didn't mean to startle you." But instead of calming the atmosphere, their presence only intensified the unease that hung in the air. "What if they're working with her?" someone whispered, eyes darting nervously around the cafe. "Let's not jump to conclusions," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "We can't lose trust in each other. We need to give everyone the benefit of the doubt." Mia nodded, but I could see the concern in her eyes. "Let's keep our guard up, just in case." As the newcomers settled in, their laughter clashing with our anxiety, I felt a sense of dread begin to seep into the atmosphere. It was as if the dark-haired woman was already here, hiding among them, her presence lurking just beneath the surface. An hour passed, and fatigue began to set in among the patrons. We were tired, both physically and mentally, and I could see the exhaustion written across their faces. "We should take shifts," I suggested. "Some of us can rest while others keep watch." Mia agreed, and we quickly organized a schedule. As the hours wore on, I took my place by the window, watching the street outside while the others began to drift off into uneasy slumber. With each passing moment, the cafe felt more and more like a sanctuary of light surrounded by encroaching darkness. I wanted to believe that we were safe, but the shadows felt alive, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were merely biding our time and that the dark-haired woman would return with a vengeance. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, a chill swept through the cafe, creeping through the cracks of the walls. I glanced around, the patrons huddled together, their breaths shallow as they slept. Then, just as I thought I could finally relax, the door creaked open. I held my breath as a figure stepped inside, shrouded in darkness. It was a woman, her hair cascading down her shoulders, but I couldn't see her face. Panic surged through me. "Everyone, wake up!" I shouted, my heart racing. But it was too late. The figure stepped forward, and as the light from the cafe fell upon her, I gasped. It wasn't the dark-haired woman, but someone who looked eerily similar, a sister or a doppelganger. "Hello," she said, her voice smooth but laced with an unsettling quality. "I've come to warn you." My heart raced as I exchanged glances with Mia. "What do you mean?" I demanded, stepping forward. "They're coming for you," she replied, her eyes darting nervously around the cafe. "The shadows are restless. They won't stop until they have what they want." "Who are you?" someone from the group asked, uncertainty etched on their face. "I'm not your enemy," she said, raising her hands in a placating gesture. "But I can't stay long. You need to prepare." "Prepare for what?" I pressed, desperation seeping into my voice. "For the darkness to return. You need to strengthen your bonds, or it will consume you." And just like that, she turned to leave, glancing back over her shoulder. "Trust no one," she warned, her voice barely above a whisper. I watched in disbelief as she slipped back into the night, leaving behind an unsettling silence that swallowed the cafe whole. "What just happened?" Mia murmured, her eyes wide with shock. "Did she really just warn us?" I asked, the weight of her words pressing down on me. But as I looked around at the faces of my friends, I realized something profound. We had to prepare for the worst. The silence in the cafe felt thick, like a heavy fog pressing down on us. I could see the fear mirrored in the eyes of those around me, the uncertainty hanging in the air like a sword poised to drop. "What do we do now?" someone whispered, their voice trembling slightly. Mia turned to face the group, her expression a mixture of resolve and concern. "We prepare. Whatever is coming, we need to be ready for it." "Ready for what, exactly?" I asked, my mind racing. "How do we fight something we can't see?" "We strengthen our bonds, just like she said," Mia replied. "We need to work together, be vigilant. It's our only chance." The patrons nodded, a sense of determination settling over us. We began discussing ways to fortify our defenses, sharing ideas and strategies in hushed tones, each suggestion building upon the last. "Maybe we can set up a watch system," one patron suggested. "If we keep a lookout, we might be able to spot anything unusual." "Yes, and we should create a safe area," Mia added. "Somewhere we can retreat to if things get too intense." The group began to brainstorm, voices rising and falling in excitement as we plotted our defense against the encroaching darkness. We divided tasks, assigning roles to everyone, and for the first time in hours, I felt a flicker of hope. As we organized, the cafe felt like a sanctuary again, a haven filled with purpose. The warmth of camaraderie wrapped around us, momentarily blinding me to the looming threat outside. But as the night deepened, that warmth began to fade, and an ominous chill seeped back into the room. I glanced at the clock, almost midnight. The air felt heavy, as if something was gathering just beyond the threshold. "Everyone, let's take a break and regroup in half an hour," I suggested, trying to maintain a sense of calm. "We need to keep our energy up." The group dispersed, retreating to small clusters, whispering and sharing stories to keep spirits high. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, leaning against the counter, watching the street outside. Just then, Mia approached me, her brow furrowed. "Do you think she was telling the truth about the darkness coming for us?" "I don't know," I admitted, my heart heavy. "But we can't ignore it. We've seen what that darkness can do." Mia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "What if it's more than just one woman? What if there's a whole force behind her?" The idea sent a chill down my spine. "Then we need to be prepared for anything. We need to be stronger together." "Agreed," she replied, crossing her arms as she surveyed the cafe. "But what does that mean for us? What can we really do?" I opened my mouth to respond when a sudden crash echoed from the back of the cafe. We both jumped, adrenaline coursing through us as we exchanged worried glances. "Stay here," I instructed, moving cautiously toward the sound. As I approached, the shadows cast by the dim lights seemed to grow darker, swirling ominously around the edges of the room. I turned the corner to find a table overturned, chairs scattered. "What happened?" I called out, my voice shaking slightly. "It just fell over," a patron exclaimed, looking visibly shaken. I swear, there was nothing near it. The unease in the air thickened. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I scanned the room, searching for any sign of the dark-haired woman or her lingering shadows. "Everyone, gather together!" I shouted, my voice echoing off the walls. "We need to stick close." The patrons hurriedly gathered, forming a tight circle around the counter. I could feel the anxiety rising as the shadows seemed to inch closer, their presence pressing against us. "What if she's here?" one of them whispered, fear evident in their voice. I glanced at Mia, who looked equally troubled. "We need to stay calm. Panic will only make it worse." Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and the cafe fell into a momentary darkness. Gasps erupted around me, and I could feel the tension in the air crackling like electricity. "Stay together," I shouted, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're stronger in numbers." Just then, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the cafe, and I caught sight of the dark-haired woman standing in the doorway, her smile as cold as the night outside. "Hello, my friends," she said, her voice smooth and taunting. "Miss me?" Panic surged through the group, and I felt my heart race. "What do you want?" I demanded, stepping forward to confront her. Her smile widened, revealing a chilling joy that sent shivers down my spine. "I want to show you something." A little glimpse into the shadows. "Leave us alone," Mia shouted, her voice rising above the fear. The woman tilted her head, feigning innocence. "But you invited me in. You're all so eager to play with the darkness." In that moment, the air thickened, and shadows began to swirl around her, coiling like serpents ready to strike. "Everyone, back!" I shouted, my heart pounding. "Get behind me!" The patrons stumbled backward, clinging to one another as the shadows writhed, eager to break free. I felt a surge of fear, but deep down, I knew we had to fight back. "Focus!" I yelled, my voice steadying as I drew on the strength of those around me. "We've faced her before. We can do it again." The group rallied, stepping closer together, hearts pounding in unison as we focused on the light within us. The dark-haired woman laughed, a haunting sound that echoed through the cafe. "You think your little light can save you? You have no idea what you're dealing with." "Maybe not," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "but we'll fight for each other." As we joined our hands, a warm glow enveloped us, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in fury as the light surged forward, piercing through the fear. "No!" the woman screamed, her voice filled with rage as she struggled against the light. "You can't stop what's coming." But we pressed on, our collective strength pushing back against the darkness, forcing it to retreat. And just as we felt we might succeed, the dark-haired woman raised her hands, summoning the shadows to her. "Let's see how long you can hold this light," she shouted, her voice echoing with power. The shadows surged forward, wrapping around us like tendrils, pulling us into the depths of darkness. "Stay strong," I shouted, feeling the weight of despair pressing down on me. "We can't give in." But as the shadows engulfed us, I felt a sense of hopelessness wash over me. What if this time we wouldn't be able to fight back? The shadows closed in, their icy tendrils wrapping around my limbs like a vice, squeezing the light from my heart. Panic surged within me as I felt the weight of the darkness pressing down, threatening to consume everything we had fought for. "Don't let go!" Mia cried out, her voice barely audible over the swirling chaos. We clung to one another, forming a chain of unity as the shadows writhed around us, desperate to tear us apart. My breath quickened, each heartbeat echoing in my ears like a countdown to despair. "Focus!" I shouted, forcing myself to stay centered amidst the overwhelming fear. "Remember what we've been through. We are stronger together." With those words, I reached deep within myself, tapping into the flickering light that still burned bright despite the darkness surrounding us. The warmth began to spread, illuminating the shadows that threatened to engulf us. "Feel it," I urged the group. "Let your light shine." As if in response, the others began to glow, a warm radiance pushing back against the cold. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in anger as the light began to break through the oppressive darkness. But the dark-haired woman wasn't finished. "You think this will save you?" she sneered, her voice echoing with malice. You are only delaying the inevitable. With a swift movement, she waved her hands, summoning even more shadows, a swirling mass that threatened to overtake us. I felt a surge of desperation. Everyone, hold on! I shouted, my voice breaking through the fear. We have to push through together. Just then, Mia stepped forward, her eyes fierce and determined. We can't let her win, she yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. The group rallied behind her, and we focused all our energy on the light. The radiance intensified, a brilliant beacon shining brightly in the suffocating darkness. As the shadows clashed against our light, I caught a glimpse of the dark-haired woman's face, twisted in rage and frustration. You will pay for this, she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. But I could feel the tide shifting. Our light was pushing back the shadows, reclaiming our space, forcing the darkness to retreat. The cafe began to brighten, the oppressive weight of fear lifting slowly. Together, I called out, urging everyone to channel their strength. As we joined our hands, the warmth radiated outward, engulfing the shadows in a brilliant light. The dark-haired woman stumbled backward, her confidence shattering as she realized her control was slipping. No, she cried, her voice wavering. You cannot do this. But we could. With one final surge of energy, our light burst forth like a sun breaking through the clouds, illuminating the entire cafe. The shadows shrieked, unraveling as the light enveloped them, banishing them to the corners of the room. The dark-haired woman was thrown back against the wall, her form flickering like a dying flame. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the darkness dissipated, retreating like smoke into the night. Panting and shaken, we stood in a circle, our hands still linked, the glow of our light fading but the warmth remaining. What just happened? Someone gasped, their voice trembling. We fought back, I replied, still trying to catch my breath. We stood together against the darkness. But as I looked around the cafe, a nagging doubt crept into my mind. What if it returns? I whispered, the fear echoing in my chest. Mia stepped closer, her eyes filled with determination. We will be ready, she said firmly. We've faced it once. We can do it again. The group nodded, the resolve strengthening in our hearts. But as the adrenaline faded, I felt the weight of exhaustion settling in. Let's regroup and rest, I suggested, my voice barely above a whisper. We need to recover before anything else happens. As we settled back into our seats, I couldn't shake the feeling that the night was far from over. The darkness had retreated for now, but I knew it would return. We would have to be vigilant, our hearts united against the shadows lurking just outside our fragile sanctuary. The dawn broke slowly over the horizon, a muted light filtering through the cafe windows, casting long shadows across the floor. I blinked against the brightness, trying to shake off the remnants of the night's chaos. Despite our triumph, unease settled in my gut, a persistent reminder of the darkness we had faced. As I looked around, I could see the fatigue etched on the faces of my companions. We had fought hard, but the threat still loomed large. Mia stood beside me, her eyes fluttering open. Did we really do it? She murmured, stretching as if waking from a bad dream. I think so, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. But we can't let our guard down. The cafe was still, the usual bustle of morning patrons absent. It felt as if the world outside was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. What if she comes back? Mia asked, her voice laced with worry. I shrugged, uncertainty pooling in my chest. We need to prepare for the worst. We can't let her catch us off guard. Just then, the door swung open and a few regulars stepped inside, the familiar jingle of the bell above the entrance breaking the heavy silence. "Good morning," one of them called, cheerfully unaware of the darkness that had lingered the night before. "Morning," I replied, forcing a smile. But as they settled in, I could see their excitement turn to confusion. The cafe was different now, filled with a lingering tension that seeped into the air. Mia and I exchanged glances, silently communicating our shared anxiety. "What if they don't believe us?" she whispered. "What if they think we're just overreacting?" "We have to tell them," I said firmly. "They need to know what we faced. They need to be prepared." As the patrons began to order their drinks, I cleared my throat, my heart pounding as I stood up. "Excuse me, everyone," I called, trying to catch their attention. They looked up, curious and confused. "I know it's early, but we need to talk about something important." The chatter died down, and I could feel the weight of their gazes upon me. "Last night, we faced something dark," I began, choosing my words carefully. "We fought against a woman who brought shadows with her." Some exchanged skeptical glances, while others looked intrigued. "Are you serious?" a man asked, leaning forward. "I know it sounds crazy," I admitted, "but it's true. We need to be vigilant. She could return at any moment." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the crowd, but I pressed on. We stood together against her, and it was our unity that saved us. But we can't let our guard down. We need to be ready. Mia stepped forward, her voice steady. "We can't afford to ignore this. If we work together, we can protect ourselves. But we need to believe each other." A few patrons nodded, their expressions shifting from skepticism to concern. "What do we need to do?" one woman asked, her voice strong. "Form a group," I suggested, feeling a flicker of hope. "We can watch out for each other, keep each other informed. We need to be prepared for anything." The patrons began to murmur amongst themselves, and I could see the fear creeping into their eyes. But amid that fear, there was a sense of solidarity beginning to form. "Okay," the man who had first questioned me said, standing up. "I'm in. We can't let this thing take control of our lives." As more voices joined in, I felt a surge of relief. We were coming together, united against a common threat. But as the excitement built, a shadow flickered at the edge of my vision, a dark silhouette that sent a chill down my spine. I turned quickly, but it was gone, swallowed by the light of the cafe. "Everyone!" I shouted, my voice rising above the chatter. "Stay alert. We can't let our guard down." As the cafe began to fill with determination, I knew that the darkness wasn't finished with us yet. We had won a battle, but the war was far from over. The buzz of conversation filled the cafe as more patrons rallied around us, the air thick with a mix of hope and tension. We had formed a makeshift alliance, a community united by our shared fear and determination. "Let's gather in the back room," I suggested, trying to create a more private space where we could discuss our strategy without drawing too much attention. "We need to come up with a plan." Murmurs of agreement spread through the crowd, and we moved to the back, the tension easing slightly as we settled into a circle. I glanced around at the familiar faces, each marked by their own expressions of concern. "What should we do first?" Mia asked, her voice steady despite the unease hanging in the air. "We need to set up a schedule," I replied, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. "A watch system. If we can keep an eye out for anything unusual, we might be able to catch her before she strikes." One of the patrons, a tall man with a scruffy beard, nodded in agreement. We can take turns keeping watch through the night. I'll volunteer for the first shift. I'll join you, a woman with bright blue hair chimed in. The more eyes we have, the better. As we began to organize our roles, a sense of purpose began to replace the fear that had gripped us. We divided into pairs, each assigned a time slot for the next few nights. But what do we do if we see her? A young man asked, his voice trembling. We confront her, I said firmly. We don't let her intimidate us. We stand our ground. The group nodded, though I could see doubt flickering in their eyes. And if that doesn't work, the young man pressed. We'll find a way to protect each other, Mia added, her voice steady. We have to believe in our strength together. As the conversation shifted to strategies, I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The darkness had already been pushed back, but I sensed it lurking just outside, waiting for the right moment to strike. Once we finalized our plan, I glanced around the circle, my heart swelling with pride. Thank you, everyone. We're stronger together, and I know we can face whatever comes next. But just as I spoke, the cafe door swung open and a gust of cold air rushed in, chilling me to the bone. The atmosphere shifted instantly, a palpable tension settling over the group. I turned to see the dark-haired woman standing in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the light outside. Hello, my friends, she called, her voice dripping with mockery. I see you've made some new friends. Panic erupted, the patrons scrambling to their feet as fear gripped the room. I felt a surge of adrenaline course through me, and I stepped forward, determination flooding my veins. Get back! I shouted, positioning myself protectively in front of the group. Ah, brave little warrior, the woman sneered, her eyes glinting with malice. But you cannot protect them from me. We won't let you take us, I declared, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling around us. We're not afraid of you. The cafe felt electric, tension hanging in the air as the patrons rallied behind me, their collective fear morphing into strength. Is that so? She taunted, stepping further into the room. You think your little group can stand against the darkness? You have no idea what you're dealing with. Her words struck a chord of fear, but I refused to let it consume me. We know more than you think, I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady. And we'll fight for each other. With that, the group rallied, stepping closer together, forming a united front against the impending threat. The woman's smile twisted into something sinister. Very well, let's see how strong you truly are. And with that, she lunged forward, shadows swirling around her as she advanced, tendrils of darkness reaching for us. Stay together! I yelled, my heart racing. As we braced ourselves, I could feel the light inside us flickering, ready to erupt against the encroaching shadows. Now! I shouted, our combined energy surging forth, radiating like a beacon in the night. The darkness shrieked, recoiling from the light, but the woman pressed forward, her eyes filled with fury. You cannot win, she screamed, her voice reverberating with the power of the shadows. But we pushed back, our light flaring brighter, illuminating the cafe with a warm glow that chased away the darkness. Fight back! Mia shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. With renewed determination, we focused our energy, our light coalescing into a powerful force that surged toward the dark-haired woman. The shadows clashed against our brilliance, a battle of light and darkness unfolding in the small cafe. I felt my heart race as the tension escalated, the air thick with electricity. Just then, the woman let out a piercing scream, the sound reverberating through the room, filled with a blend of rage and fear. You cannot defeat me. But we could. Together, we unleashed our light, a radiant explosion that illuminated every corner of the cafe. As the darkness began to unravel, I could see the woman's face twisting in despair. No. This is not over. With a final push, our combined energy surged forward, forcing the shadows to retreat. And then, with one last scream, the dark-haired woman was consumed by the light, her form dissolving into the air, the shadows scattering like smoke. For a moment, silence fell over the cafe, the air buzzing with the remnants of our power. We stood together, panting and shaking, but a sense of triumph coursed through us. We did it! Mia exclaimed, a smile breaking through her fear. But as I looked around, I knew this victory came with a heavy price. The darkness had retreated, but it would always linger, waiting for another opportunity to strike. And as the cafe began to fill with laughter and relief, I felt a deep-seated dread settle in my chest. This wasn't the end. As the laughter echoed around me, I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that the battle we had just fought was only the beginning. The darkness may have retreated for now, but I knew it was merely biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. Are you okay? Mia asked, her brow furrowing as she noticed my distant expression. I don't know, I admitted, glancing around at the relieved faces of the patrons. I just can't shake this feeling that it's not over. She nodded, understanding my fear all too well. We should remain vigilant. We can't let our guard down. Let's keep the group active, I suggested, turning to the others. We need to stay connected, watch out for each other. Just in case. The patrons murmured in agreement, and we began to discuss the possibility of regular meetings to share experiences and stay alert for any signs of danger. As the conversation continued, I felt a familiar chill creep through the cafe, a cold breeze that sent shivers down my spine. I glanced toward the entrance, half expecting to see the dark-haired woman return. Did you feel that? I asked, my voice low. Feel what? Someone replied, their brows furrowed in confusion. The cold, I said, unable to shake the sensation that something was off. It doesn't feel right. Before anyone could respond, the cafe door swung open again, and a group of customers walked in, their laughter filling the air. But my heart sank as I recognized one of them. It was her, the dark-haired woman, her expression smug and triumphant. You thought you could defeat me, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. How naive. Panic surged through the room, and the patrons froze, their laughter dying on their lips. Back away! I shouted, stepping forward, my heart racing. You have no idea what you're up against, she continued, stepping further into the cafe, shadows swirling around her like a cloak. This time, I will take what's mine. With a flick of her wrist, the shadows surged forward, tendrils reaching for the patrons, wrapping around their ankles and dragging them toward her. No! I yelled, instinctively rushing forward. Mia grabbed my arm, her eyes wide with fear. We can't let her do this. We have to fight. Everyone, stand together! I shouted, rallying the patrons behind me as I felt the fear creeping in again. We huddled together, hands linked, channeling our energy into a collective force. We won't let you take us, I declared, my voice steady despite the chaos surrounding us. The dark-haired woman laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the cafe. You think your little lights can save you? But we stood firm, focusing on the light within us, letting it grow stronger as the shadows pressed in around us. Now! I called out, and we released our energy, a brilliant burst of light that illuminated the room. The shadows shrieked, but the dark-haired woman stood her ground, her expression hardening as she fought against the brilliance. "You think this is over?" she screamed, the shadows swirling violently around her. I could feel the strain in our group as we held the light, but we pressed on, determined to push back the darkness. "Together!" Mia cried, her voice cutting through the chaos. As we concentrated our energy, I felt the warmth enveloping us, pushing against the shadows, forcing them to retreat. The woman's fury intensified, her form flickering as the light grew brighter. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice filled with rage. "You will pay for this." But we didn't waver. Our collective strength surged forward, a beacon of hope cutting through the despair. With one final push, our light exploded, flooding the cafe with brilliance. And then, in a blinding flash, the shadows dissolved, retreating into the corners of the room, leaving behind an eerie silence. The dark-haired woman stumbled backward, her form flickering like a dying flame. "This isn't over," she hissed, her eyes filled with rage as she faded into the shadows. For a moment, we all stood still, our hearts pounding as we caught our breath. "We did it," one patron exclaimed, relief flooding the room. But deep down, I knew the truth. "She'll come back," I murmured, my voice filled with dread. "This isn't the end." As the cafe filled with nervous laughter and chatter, I felt the weight of our reality settling in. The darkness was relentless, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it would always be lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike again. We had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The laughter around me felt hollow, the sense of triumph overshadowed by the lingering fear. "Are we safe?" a young woman asked, her voice shaking. "For now," I replied, my heart heavy with uncertainty. But as I looked around at the familiar faces, I felt a flicker of hope. We were together, united against the darkness that sought to tear us apart. And as long as we stood together, there was still a chance we could face whatever came next. But deep down, I knew I would always carry the scars of this night, a reminder that even in the light, shadows could lurk just beyond our reach. The cafe remained a sanctuary, a place where laughter mingled with the whispers of fear. We held regular meetings, sharing our experiences and keeping our community strong. The darkness had been pushed back, but the threat was always present, lurking just beyond the horizon. As I sat at my usual table, watching the world go by, I couldn't help but feel the weight of my experiences. The shadows may have retreated, but they would never truly disappear. And as I sipped my coffee, I felt a sense of peace settle within me. We had faced the darkness together, and while it would always be a part of us, we had emerged stronger, united in our resolve to confront whatever lay ahead. And so, life in the cafe continued, a delicate balance of light and dark, hope and fear. And as long as we remained together, I knew we could face anything. Hope your dreams are filled with fear. Good night.